to the January 9th meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. Happy New Year, and we are here. This is your new town council. This is our first meeting together. And I assume that all of us are excited about that. So let's get busy. First on the agenda is our poetry reading by our esteemed Carrboro Poet Laureate, Liza Wolfe Francis. Good to see you.
Happy New Year. It's such a exciting thing to see you all here in this bright new room, which is wonderful. I was not able to be here at the last meeting, and so I'm glad to start out the year with this, and I wanted to read a poem in honor for Mayor Fauci. Bushi? I don't know. Your name is hard to pronounce. Bushi. I will get it. Poem for Mayor Barbara Foushee. There's a new mayor in town. First Black woman mayor of Carrboro. Carrboro. Is everything okay? Okay, sorry. Let me start over. Okay. Poem for Mayor Barbara Foushee. There's a new mayor in town. First Black woman mayor of Carrboro. Carrboro threads women into power. Carrboro threads the voice of a Black woman into power. How are different voices heard with a Black woman community leader? Ghosts of the past clink glasses. Carrboro clinks glasses. Cheers for success. This is a new beginning, a change of power. Power leading for change, for service. Our town raises up voices of those who want to serve. Let's recognize being mayor is a hard job. The installation of a town leader who has been here leading, but continues in a new leadership role, one that is a success of hers as a person, as a woman, as a Black woman. One that is a success of the town of Carrboro moving to bring people into power who represent voices that in the past have not only been marginalized but oppressed. Before the election, I said to Barbara, "How wonderful, it looks like you're going to be the next mayor." She said, "Yes, well, I'm running unopposed." I believe she was running unopposed not because there isn't anyone out there who would step up, not because no one thinks they could do it, but because this is a position meant for her at this time. It is her win with full support. Each mayor works with the council. Each mayor works for the town. Each mayor brings what they can to Carrboro, their service, their time, their dedication. This is Mayor Foushee's time. Carrboro threads women into power. Carrboro threads the voice of a Black woman into power. This vote, this office, Mayor Foushee crosses a dim clearing, out of shadows into sun. Mayor, don't hold back. This is the time to light the fire. Congratulations.
No way.
And to all of you, glad you are here. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Oh my, I'm speechless and emotional at the same time. I so appreciate that. That's so amazing. Thank you. So we have several proclamations that I will be reading. I will head up to the podium. If I could get Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell to join me here. The first proclamation is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This day is actually celebrated on January the 27th. I am issuing this proclamation tonight because we have a work session on the 16th and the Assembly of Governments on the 23rd. And so we absolutely want to go ahead and issue this important proclamation. Whereas the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution in November 2025 to designate the 27th of January as the International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. And whereas since 2005, the UN and its member states have held commemoration ceremonies to mark the anniversaries of the liberation of the, and I'm probably going Auschwitz. You want to pronounce that? Asterisk. Birkenau Camp, and I'm sorry for murdering that word, and to honor the victims and survivors of the Holocaust. And whereas this year, on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, the town of Carrboro commemorates the 79th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Birkenau, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And whereas the purpose of International Holocaust Remembrance Day is to serve as a date of the official commemoration of the victims of the Nazi regime, and to promote Holocaust education throughout the world. And whereas International Holocaust Remembrance Day has been set aside for the people of the town of Carrboro to join together as a community to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect of all peoples and to overcome intolerance and indifference through learning and remembrance. Now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby declare January 27th, 2024 as International Holocaust Remembrance Day in the town of Carrboro and encourage all community members to reflect on this day of remembrance, this the 9th day of January 2024. And I will present this to Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell, and I believe she may have a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Foushee. I'm accepting this. I feel very humbled to accept this for Rabbi Solomon of the Kehillah, who could not be here tonight because his property is flooding. But I have let him know that I'm accepting this for him. I just want to say that Carrboro has stood with this resolution from the UN since 2005 and has consistently stood in solidarity against anti-Semitism and with though Carrboro has a very, very small Jewish population, probably the minority of the minorities, and I am probably the only Jewish female council member that's ever been on the Carrboro Board of Aldermen of the Council. It is a privilege to be in Carrboro and to be in an environment where the safety of all of our folks is a priority. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. I would like to invite Lori Clark to join me at the podium for a proclamation on National Mentoring Month. I know the value of being a mentor, having had 3 or 4, something like that, Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocate. And so happy to have Lori Clark join us this evening. Whereas January is National Mentoring Month, an annual campaign to raise awareness of and celebrate the powerful impact of mentoring relationships, recruit new mentors, and encourage institutions to integrate quality mentoring into their policies, practices. And whereas Carrboro, North Carolina recognizes the contributions of volunteer mentors who link youth to economic and social opportunity while also strengthening our community. And whereas Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocate and Volunteers for Youth mentoring programs in Carrboro make our communities stronger by enabling impactful relationships that provide invaluable support networks, provide support to mentors, provide opportunities that engage and enrich youth. And whereas youth development experts agree that mentoring encourages positive youth development and smart daily behaviors, such as finishing homework and having healthy social interactions, and has a positive impact on the growth and success of a young person. And whereas mentoring programs generally have a significant positive impact on youth academic achievement, school connectedness and engagement, and educational success which can lead to outcomes such as improved attendance, grades, test scores, and classroom behavior. And whereas mentors can help young people set career goals and can help connect mentees to industry professionals to train for and find jobs. And whereas effective mentoring of underserved and vulnerable populations of young people helps them confront challenges and enjoy improved mental health and social emotional well-being. And whereas mentoring programs have been found to positively impact many aspects of mental well-being, including reducing unhealthy coping mechanisms, improving interpersonal relationships, and reducing parental stress. And whereas young people with a mentor are more likely to enroll in college, to participate in sports or extracurricular activities, to hold a leadership position in a club or sports team, and to volunteer regularly, and less likely to start using drugs. And whereas mentoring is an innovative, evidence-based practice and uniquely is both a prevention and intervention strategy that can support young people of all demographics and backgrounds in all aspects of their lives. And whereas, despite the benefits of mentoring, one young person of every 3 is growing up without a mentor, which means a third of the youth of the United States are growing up without someone outside of the home to offer real-life guidance and support. And whereas this mentoring gap demonstrates the need for collaboration among the private, public, and nonprofit sectors to increase resources for relationship-centric support for youth in communities, schools, and workplaces. And now, therefore I, Mayor Barbara M. Foushee, do hereby proclaim January 2024 as National Mentoring Month in Carrboro, North Carolina, this, the 9th day of January 2024, and present this to the one and only Miss Lori Clark. A few words. I want to say a few-
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mayor. Nice to see all of the council members here. Blue Ribbon has been around for a while. It was created to close the achievement gap, and unfortunately, we still have a gap, but we're still working towards closing that gap. Mentoring is essential and very important. The town of Carrboro has been a great partner. Like the mayor said, she has mentored several of our scholars. We're recruiting, so if there's anyone that's interested in mentoring, please look us up on the website. But we are also grateful to the town of Carrboro for being a partner and allowing our youth to engage in service learning projects with Parks and Rec. So there's no better way to allow for scholars to see the impact of service and giving back than to be able to do it in their own community. So we're grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with you all to provide this opportunity. And thank you so much for acknowledging mentoring in our town.
Thank you so much. I'd like to call Anita Jones McNair, Chief Race and Equity Officer for the town of Carrboro, forward as I read this last proclamation on the National Day of Racial Healing. Whereas the National Day of Racial Healing is an annual observance initiated as part of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation's Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation program and promoted by the program's many community partners across the United States. And whereas long-standing racial divisions across all communities threaten the core of democracy, and the racial inequities exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and highlighted by uprisings for racial justice underscore the role of systems and institutions in perpetuating inequalities and injustice that are generations in the making. And whereas we understand and recognize that we all must work earnestly and intentionally to heal the wounds created by racial, ethnic, and religious bias, and build an equitable and just society in which all people can thrive. and in which children have the opportunity to learn and grow in nurturing environments that safeguard their safety, their dignity, and humanity. And whereas the town of Carrboro is committed to advancing racial equity and has recently taken actions in support of this commitment, such as joining the Government Alliance on Race and Equity in 2018, unveiling truth plaques at Town Hall, and the site of the former Freedom School on East Main Street to acknowledge the ties of the town's namesake to racial segregation and other truths about Carrboro's history, designating Juneteenth as a paid holiday for town employees beginning in 2021, adopting the town's inclusive Carrboro communication and engagement plan in August of 2020, adopting a resolution in support of reparations for Black Carrboro in October of 2020, completing Carrboro's first Black Lives Matter mural at the Community Works Building on West Main Street in December 2020, and a second Black Lives Matter mural at the Century Center in January 2021, establishing the Racial Equity Commission in January 2021, facilitating ongoing BIPOC business roundtables and providing consulting and other resources to BIPOC businesses, adopting the Carrboro Connects 2022 the 2042 Comprehensive Plan in 2022, which has race and equity as one of its foundational themes, hiring a full-time race and equity officer and creating a race and equity manager position in 2022 for the town, accompanying council agenda items with racial equity assessment lens or equity pocket questions in March 2023 to help provide a deeper awareness and guidance in decision-making and centering equity. Partnering with UNC Chapel Hill's Building Integrated Communities Initiative to strengthen communication and interpretation services for all residents. Installing the third Town of Carrboro Truth Plaque in September 2023 at the Strayhorn House, 109 Jones Ferry Road, recognizing the first Black family of Carrboro. Incorporating equity competencies in updated employee performance evaluation tool, receiving recommendations from the Community Safety Task Force to the Town Council about Carrboro safety and alternatives to policing in November 2023, beginning a disparity study in 2023 to inform changes to the town's procurement policies to increase opportunities for minority and women-owned business enterprises. Launching Carrboro in Motion in 2022 to increase neighbor-to-neighbor participation and engagement with a focus on underserved neighbors. Organizing and scheduling ongoing training and special activities for town employees to normalize, organize, and operationalize the work of advancing racial equity. Evaluating Town of Carrboro practices, policies, procedures, and services using a racial equity assessment lens, collaborating with the other jurisdictions in Orange County to adopt the One Orange Racial Equity Framework in February 2022 and the Racial Equity Dashboard September 2023. Incorporating race and equity orientation in the onboarding process of new staff in 2023. Strengthening and developing community partnerships and opportunities in our community. Approving the Racial Equity Action Plan, Weaving Equity in Carrboro Town Government in December 2023. And whereas members of the town's Youth Advisory Board, the Carrboro Youth Council, and the Chapel Hill Carrboro NAACP Youth Council will hold a special celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. on Saturday, January 13th, 2024 at 1 p.m. in the Carrboro Century Center. And whereas communities throughout the United States and around the world acknowledge either the Tuesday following Martin Luther King Jr. Day or the third Tuesday in January as a National Day of Racial Healing as a way to promote relation building, truth-telling, and racial equity, healing and solidarity, and transformative action. Now, therefore, I, Barbara Foushee, Mayor of the Town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim January 16th, 2024, the Tuesday following Martin Luther King Jr. Day, as a National Day of Racial Healing in Carrboro and encourage all residents to share ideas, knowledge, and points of view related to truth, racial healing, transformation, and racial equity. This, the 9th day of January 2024. Miss Anita Jones McNair, you have been very busy. I almost didn't make it through the proclamation. These are a lot of initiatives, and we're, the council, we're all very proud of this work, and we thank you for being at the center of it all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Wow. I certainly am so proud to be a part of an organization that understands the importance of its community and community members. And one of the things that I want to thank you all for and make sure that you all understand is that you all are the cornerstone of all of this work that we're doing. And if it were not for many of you or all of you, we would not be doing the kind of work that we're doing. So thank you for lifting up the work that we're doing. And I'm so proud to be a part of this organization. Thank you.
We'll now have the announcement of upcoming meetings.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. A few meetings coming up in the coming week. On Wednesday, January 10th, we have the Art Committee, and they'll be meeting at Carrboro Century Center from 6 to 7 p.m. We have the Board of Adjustments that will be meeting at Town Hall in the council chambers from 7 to 10 p.m. The Economic Sustainability Commission meeting was canceled. On Thursday, January 11th, the Appearance Commission will be meeting via Zoom, 6:30 to 7:30. The Stormwater Advisory Commission meeting will meet via Zoom, 6:30 to 7:30. And next week is our work session back here at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Wendy. And I did want to mention, well, before I do, does anybody else have any announcements for upcoming meetings? Councilmember Posada.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm bringing this up because I won't be here next week. But on the 27th at 10:30 a.m., the Affordable Housing Commission chair, as well as folks from the staff and some community partners will be having a community meeting around housing and what Carrboro is doing and how the Affordable Housing Commission can support the vision of our residents in that. So I invite folks to this event. Again, it's January 27th from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at Chapel Hill Library. There will be refreshments, so encourage everyone in town to attend.
Who is that sponsored by, Councilmember Posada?
Our Affordable Housing Commission chair, Betsy.
Okay.
Betty, sorry.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Yeah, I'm not here. I'm not present on the 16th either, and so I wanted folks to be aware that on the 17th of January is the Chapel Hill Orange County Visitors Bureau meeting, and on the 18th is, 18th. Let me just check this. Let me get the date. And on the 24th is the Central Pines Regional Council open house and ribbon cutting.
Thank you. Are you planning to be there on the 17th for the Visitors Bureau?
Yes,
Okay. All right, good.
but I won't be able to announce it on the 16th.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And on the 23rd, we have governments.
Yeah,
so-
we do. Thank you. And I did want to announce a full weekend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Events, the first of which is sponsored by the town of Carrboro's Parks and Rec Department and the NAACP Youth Council and the Carrboro Youth Council. That'll be on Saturday at 1 in Century Hall. There is also the MLK Junior Community Celebration that UNC does. That is Sunday, January 14th at the Friday Center at 6, and the Chapel Hill Carrboro NAACP will bring back the march and the rally since first one since the pandemic. And that will start at 10 a.m. on January the 15th, followed by the usual service at First Baptist Church of Chapel Hill. So please take note of all those events to celebrate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Anything else, council members? All right. Moving right along to public comment. So most people are signed up to speak on an item on the agenda, the Wasamba agreement item. And we will be taking that public comment when we get to that item. But I do have Clara Zalaski. Yes, Clara Zalaski is here to speak on the Pathway Project. If you would come to the podium, you have a soft 3 minutes. Please address your comments to the entire council, and we do have discussion guidelines behind you.
Hi, I'm Clara, and I live on Gracewood Place. And I want to talk about stormwater, how appropriate tonight, and then also the stormwater financial assistance program is on the agenda as well. And so I live on Gracewood Place. Behind my house is the tot lot, and it borders, so the streets that border it are Gracewood Place, Hanford Road, Waverly Forest, and then the Pathway Project. And so I went out there this afternoon around 4:30 after a moderate rain, but not severe like we just had. I took some video where I'm going to send to you as soon as I can figure out how to get it uploaded. And there was a considerable amount of flooding back there. The ground was very soggy, and you could see the water just sitting on top. There's a big stormwater drain there, and all the water's rushing in. So if something's going to be built on the Pathway Project, I just really want to encourage y'all to be proactive and get ahead of the ball and really plan for this stormwater problem, because right now nothing's been built and we're having flooding. Right now there's probably about this much rain on my property. I can't go out my front door because the sidewalk is flooded. And so we just really need to be proactive and get this done right so that we don't have to come back later and apply for stormwater assistance. And then the other thing I wanted to just comment on is what the big picture of this is, because we're talking about housing, but really we're talking about building a community. So we have the parcel and we have this existing community around it, and people are going to live there. People that we don't know who these people are, and that more than likely are going to be different from the people living around the community. And we want those people to be welcomed, to be accepted, to be integrated into the community. And that can happen if we do this project right. So if the council approaches this project right and involves the community and we work together, if there's hostility and the community is fighting the council and people are getting angry, then when human beings move into this housing, they're less likely to be accepted and be integrated. And the community is going to be living there 10, 20 years later. You guys won't be here anymore, but we're going to be here. And unfortunately, if this becomes a big fight, then those human beings that are going to live there are less likely going to be integrated into the community. So I would like to just encourage you for transparency, to work with us, to ask us what our wants and our needs are, to really listen to us, take our ideas seriously, and kind of come together in the middle and come up with a win-win solution if something is going to be built on this property. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Zaleski. I did just want to comment briefly. The framework that the council adopted for affordable housing on town-owned land, there are several opportunities in that framework for community engagement. And so I don't want you to, or anybody else that's watching or, concerned about how this project moves forward. I think we're on the site survey step. And so there will be opportunity for community to engage, and we welcome that. And thank you for your comments.
And just one question, has the site survey been completed?
That would be a question for,
No, it has not.
okay. So it has not.
Okay. All right. Please be transparent and let us know in the community when that has, so we can have access to those results as well.
We sure will. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't have any more public comment other than those who are here to speak about the Wasamba agreement. And so I will turn it over to Town Manager Parker for an introduction.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a new finance director, Brett Green. I would like to call him up to introduce himself and say a few words.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and good to see those that I've already met. I'm about, I guess this is a long day, so maybe about 52 hours into my public service career. So appreciate any guidance you all can give me first, but look to bring some new perspective to the finances of the town and continue to build on the successes that everyone has contributed to. We've been local, my family and I, for almost 20 years in the area. Really love it here. Grew up in New Jersey, went to school down at Elon, and didn't know why anyone went to school or lived in New Jersey. So spent 17 years in commercial real estate. A lot of stuff that happened today was interesting to my past in terms of building well-being and the financial ramifications of unexpected events. Extensive experience in leading teams, capital management, forecasting, all the fun terms that our external auditor and advisor will speak briefly to later this evening. My children all have activities after school within 3 miles of here at middle schools and soccer fields and natatoriums. So just felt like the right thing to do and a good pivot, chance to do good and not work for profit, work for the public and work for you all. So welcome any questions. I'm right around the corner here all day, every day. So feel free to come by, anyone, anytime, and look forward to working with you and continuing to advance all the work that's already been done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. We are at the consent agenda. Town Manager Parker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council members. The first item on the consent agenda is the award of the American Recovery Plan Act funding to establish and implement the Carrboro Family Financial Assistance Program. This agenda item seeks town council approval to establish a program providing targeted financial assistance for housing, utilities, childcare, and transportation costs to qualified Carrboro families. The second item on consent agenda is for the audiovisual systems contract authorization for 203 South Greensboro Street project. We are requesting town council authorize the town manager to award a contract to Clark Powell Associates for furnishing materials and labor to complete the AV installation at the 203 South Greensboro project. The final consent item is to assign an alternate to the Central Pines Regional Council. This item is to allow the town council to assign an alternate for the Central Pines Regional Council.
Thank you, Town Manager Parker. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
I'll move all 3 items.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to other matters. Town Manager Parker.
Okay. The first item is the annual comprehensive financial report and independent audit report for fiscal year ended June 30, 2023. This agenda item provides the town council with a presentation from Forvis LLP, the town's independent auditor, on the annual comprehensive financial report and audit for the fiscal year ending June 30. Chad Cook, director from Forvis, is here to present remotely. We also have staff available to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Just start off, can you all hear me well? Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me, and apologize that I
Councilmember
could
Now.
not be there in person. You have a question?
This is super finicky, but could we pin Chad? Thank you.
You don't want to look at yourself?
Do I?
We're just
Now
looking
we
at
can-
us here
we can
mostly,
see you
Chad,
better
which
now.
I am not down with at all. I'd rather look at you. It's just disconcerting. Thank you. I apologize.
Better.
No worries. All right, and let me screen. But yeah, apologies that I couldn't be there in person today. I guess with the weather, decided not to make the trek. Just in case. But certainly happy to be with you tonight to present the results of the fiscal 23 financial statement audit for the town. Again, my name is Chad Cook. I'm a director with Forbes. I want to say thank you, number one, to Langston, the deputy finance director for the town, who we worked with extensively during the audit this year, as well as Marie and just all the members of the staff that were involved during the audit. The annual comprehensive financial report has been provided to the North Carolina LGC and was actually just approved through their review process, I believe, yesterday. So that review is complete. Last year's report once again received the Certificate for Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. However, that was not received until after the finalization of the fiscal 23 audits. Typically, we include that certificate within the financial statements. Because the GFOA was running behind in their review, it wasn't done until recently, but just wanted to confirm that was received again for fiscal 22, and it's expected to be received again for fiscal 23 once the GFOA completes their review of the current year's financial statements. As it relates to the audit report, first things first, we issued an unmodified or clean audit opinion this year. We were not required this year to complete a single audit or a compliance audit over any major federal or state programs. The thresholds for those are $750,000 for federal programs, $500,000 for state programs. If you have expenditures from federal and state grant sources within those thresholds, or in excess of those thresholds, rather, you're required to go through a compliance audit. You've seen some of those in the past. In the current year, the town obviously received a large amount of ARPA funding, as did all units across the state. However, the majority of those expenditures have been deferred to future periods, and for that reason, the single audit requirements will align with those expenditures most likely in future years. So fiscal 24, as those funds are expended, I would expect you all will cross that threshold and will require a single audit. However, even though we didn't complete a single audit, the town was in excess of the thresholds required for completing the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, which does require us to look at grant agreements and compliance with certain grant agreements as it relates to the financial statements. The objective of which is making sure that if there were any type of non-compliance that could be material to the financial statements, that would be picked up on during the audit process. Happy to report that we do not have any instances of non-compliance related to those grant programs that we believe could have a material impact on the financial statement. Our presentation tonight is going to focus on two documents. First, our required report to the town council and management, which I've got shared on my screen. And then secondly, a quick one-page financial summary. So it's really just a highlight of sort of the financial picture of the town, some key areas comparing fiscal 23 to fiscal 22, and I've got some comments prepared just regarding some of those changes. We're obviously not going to flip through the entire annual comprehensive financial report, but certainly if anyone's had a chance to review that, which was included in the agenda package, I'd be happy to stop at any point and answer any questions that anyone may have on that. So moving on, again, first we're going to go through our report to the town council and management. This includes required communications in accordance with our audit. So as part of the auditing standards, there are certain communications that we are required to have with you all as the governing body, and those charged with governance of the town. A lot of them in this report is a boilerplate. There's some standard language, but there are some certain areas, I guess, key areas that I do want to make sure we hit on as we go through this. First, required communications regarding our audit strategy and approach. Number one, this report, just to be clear, it covers the results of your financial statements and supplementary information as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2023. We're responsible for forming and expressing opinions about whether the financial statements are prepared in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States, which in this case would be the Government Accounting Standards Board, or GASB standards. As far as the audit scope goes, an audit is designed to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance about the financial statements. The scope of our audit test is established in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole, and it does not include a detailed test of all transactions. So just to be clear, there's a risk assessment process we go through. We look at key material areas and design tests related to the risks that we identify in those areas. There are analytical procedures involved. So just to be clear, we're not looking at 100% of the town's transactions throughout the year. Moving on, one area we'd like to point out on the next page is responsibilities. Just as the governing body, our audit does not relieve management or those parts of government of your responsibilities. And those responsibilities are further referenced in our contract. So if anyone has any questions about those, there was the audit contract that we sent back prior to the commencement of the audit has outlined what's management's responsibilities, what's our responsibilities as the auditors. But certainly, if anyone has any questions on those, I'd be happy to talk through that. Moving on, government auditing standards. As I mentioned, the town did cross the threshold for us having to complete the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, or the Yellow Book. In addition to looking for potential noncompliance that could have a material impact on the financial statements, we're also required to provide a report on internal controls over financial reporting, and then report on any instances that we find there. The town did have one finding, which is included in the financial statements. It's finding 2023-001, which was reported as a material weakness in internal controls. This was caused by some journal entries that were identified during the audit, so basically corrections that were required to be made before we could issue the financial statements to ensure that the financials were materially correct. There's another slide later on that will go through some of those adjustments that were identified, so we'll hit on that there. Moving on, the next section, qualitative aspects of significant accounting policies. This section, if there are any significant accounting policies, unusual policies or methods being used by management, potentially alternative accounting treatments that could have an impact on the financial statements if you picked one method versus the other, things like that. This is the section where we would go through that. A couple things we like to hit on. Number one, significant accounting policies. There was one change in accounting standards during the year that impacted the town, and that was GASB 96. You may recall in the prior years there was a lease standard implemented in fiscal 22 where the town's leases all came on the books, or previously that had been just a disclosure. Now you have actual assets and liabilities related to the town's leasing activity. GASB 96 is similar, but this is related to software-based subscription, IT subscriptions. It only applies for long-term contracts. There was a lot of testing that went into this. The town engaged a third party to kind of go through all the various IT subscription arrangements that you have. I want to say they analyzed more than 30 different agreements. But in going through that process, they determined that there were none that were actually within the scope. So a lot of work that went into this to make sure we had a complete population, but ultimately no real financial impact on the town's financials this year. Otherwise, unusual policies or methods, alternative accounting treatments, no matters are reportable there, so nothing to report. Management's judgments and accounting estimates, we do like to point out the financial statements inherently have significant estimates within them. So, there are certain areas where management has to make estimates, and should the actual, should the estimates not align with the actual results in future years, there could be material differences within the financial statements. The four that we like to point out, number one, management estimates of the depreciable lives of capital assets, which is based on the expected useful lives of those individual capital assets. Management's estimates of the terms and discount rates used for discounting lease receivables, lease liabilities, and subscription liabilities, which are based on assumptions surrounding the town's incremental borrowing rates. Management's estimates of the allowance for doubtful accounts, which is based on historical collection experience and collateral. And then lastly, management's estimates of liabilities related to pension and OPEB plans, as well as the related deferred inflows and outflows of resources. So while those are all significant estimates within the financial statements, we do ensure that the estimates that are being used are reasonable. We take a look at those estimates with management, make sure that they're in accordance with industry norms and that they're reasonable, and we will recalculate the impacts of those estimates that were selected and make sure that everything is accurate. So nothing of concern. We just like to point out that financial statements have estimates, and those are some of the key areas that are included within the house. Moving on, as we mentioned before, this is just a little more information on GASB 96. Again, there was no impact on the town's financial statements this year, but the town has adopted that statement. So going forward, should you enter into any long-term IT arrangements, there could be an impact on the financial statements as a result, but currently nothing to report. Adjustments identified during the audit. So as we mentioned, that there were some material audit adjustments. We won't go through these line by line, but just know that there is a summary there of some of the adjustments that were required to the town's financial statements as a result of our audit procedures. Again, there is a finding, which is finding 2023-01 reported in the financial statements related to these adjustments. One thing we'd like to point out, or actually that we are required to point out, in submitting the financial statements to the local government commission, there's a data input workbook that has to go with the financial statements. And part of that data input workbook is there's a financial side to it, but there's also sort of a checklist of things that we have to fill out. And based on the responses you put in that workbook, it tells you if there are any financial performance indicators of concern. If there are, the town has 60 days to respond to the local government commission regarding those financial performance indicators. The finding related to the material weakness caused by these audit adjustments is a financial performance indicator of concern. In addition, there was one more financial performance indicator within the footnotes of the financials. There's a little more information on this, but there was a budgetary violation during the fiscal year within the general fund, and that was related to an over expenditure of about $40,000 in the transportation function within governmental activities. And that occurred because of unplanned contraction expenditures for transit services provided by the town of Chapel Hill. I think there was an invoice that came in right before the end of the year. There wasn't enough budget for it. It was certainly eligible for it was properly charged. There simply wasn't budget for it. And so the town had to pay it and did record the expenditure, but it caused the town to go over budget. So between the material weakness and internal controls, which is finding 2023-01, and then the budgetary violation, those two items are going to require a written letter signed by the majority of the town council as well as management, which has to be delivered to the LGC within 60 days of my report. So basically 60 days of today when you're hearing about it. That's how long you have to respond to the LGC. So just want to make sure that that's clear. And certainly I can discuss that process with Brett, Langston, and team, and go into any more details about how you go about responding and also where that response goes. Certainly happy to discuss with them after the meeting. Moving on, uncorrected misstatements. We would be, if there were any uncorrected misstatements noted during the audit, so things that we identified that were incorrect, but management elected not to correct them, we would be required to report those. Happy to report there were no uncorrected misstatements within the financial statements. Lastly, other communications. There is a management representations letter attached to this report. We just want to point out that there are certain things that representations that management makes to us throughout the course of the audit. We rely on those representations in determining our ultimate financial statement opinion. So certainly we have detailed tests, but there are things that we can't always detail test. Some things are just questions, and we've got to rely on the representations provide us with. So I'd like to include that as an attachment just so you can see what those representations are. That's really all that we're going to touch on in this report. I think everything else is we've already hit on. There's a little more information regarding the the internal control, material weakness, but that is also detailed within the financial statements themselves. So we won't go into further detail there. The next thing I was going to do is move on to the financial summary, but certainly if anyone had any questions on that report first, I'd be happy to pause now and then respond to those.
Thank you, Chad. Are there any questions before we move?
Just one, Madam Mayor. Chad, do you mind repeating again that helpful information for locating the material adjustment summary in the larger report?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was having a little trouble hearing, but I believe you're looking for where you can find the finding within the report.
That's correct.
So I've got the financial statements up, and actually you'll see the finding is reported as finding 2023-01. It's at the very back of the financial statements. So you'll see we've got right here, the absolute last page, page 143. It goes into a little more information, but this is the finding that relates to the material weakness and internal controls, and talks a little bit more about what areas were impacted there. our report that actually has the proposed and reported adjustment section right here. So within our report to the town council, that goes into a little more detail on what those adjustments were, the dollar amounts of those adjustments. So within the financials, a little bit higher level summary of just the fact that there were material adjustments in certain areas. This is where you can go see what those detailed adjustments were. And then we've also shared the journal entries report with Langston and team. So they have a copy of the final journal entries that were recorded as part of the audit. So if you need individual detail, it would be within that report that we shared with them.
Thank you, Chad.
We're good to proceed, Chad.
All right, so moving on, financial summary, and as we mentioned, this is just a comparison of fiscal 2023 to fiscal 2022 numbers. And I've got some percentage increases and just comments prepared regarding some of these changes. But again, if anyone has questions as we're going through these numbers, feel free to stop me. Roman numeral 1, cash and investments across all funds. So cash is up to $40.6 million as of June 30th, 2023, which is a roughly 4.7% increase. There was a second tranche of ARPA funds received during fiscal 23, which is about $3.37 million. So that's the majority, or really all of the increase there. Exclusive of those funds, there would actually been a slight decrease, I guess, within the total cash balance. Moving on, number 2, general fund available fund balance. So the general fund's available fund balance is up to $14.8 million, or a $3.4 million increase over the prior year. The available fund balance represents fund balance that is, number 1, unrestricted. It's either unrestricted or uncommitted, essentially. So if you have a committed fund balance or restricted fund balance, that comes out of that figure. So this is really what the town has available to spend sort of as you see fit in the next fiscal year with no restrictions on it. That's fairly consistent with the overall increase in the fund balance of the general fund, which is about $3.9 million for the fiscal year 2023. In Roman numerals 3 and 4, we'll go through some of the reasons for that. So we've got the general fund revenues in Roman numeral 3, and then expenditures in Roman numeral 4. So looking at number 3, we'll start off number 1, ad valorem taxes, the property taxes, which is the town's largest source of revenue within the general fund, is at $15.7 million, or roughly 1.6% increase. So there was no change in the property tax rate during fiscal 2023. So the increase there in the revenue is really just related to an increase in valuations, which went up roughly $37 million from the prior year, which could be representative of changes in individual property values. For any that were modified individually, there was not a countywide revaluation. But mostly it's just going to be new development activity within the town. So additional businesses brought online during fiscal 23, which would have paid property taxes for the first time. Local option sales taxes were up actually $660,000, or 10%, up to almost $7.1 million. That's a strong increase and in excess of the budgeted amount by about $1.6 million. So that's just reflective of increased economic activity within the town and additional sales transactions going on within the town in fiscal 23. Other taxes and licenses increased about $137,000, or 8%. $110,000 of that increase related to motor vehicle license fees. So there was an increase there. That could be a result of an increase in personal property valuations at the state level, as well as just an increase in the number of citizens or the number of vehicles within the town. But that's making up the majority of that increase. Unrestricted intergovernmental revenues went up to $1.5 million, which is a roughly 10% increase. The vast majority of that, $134,000, was related to an increase in utilities franchise taxes. That's really what's driving the increase within that line item. For restricted intergovernmental revenues, permits and fees, those are both fairly consistent with the prior year. You'll see within 1.3% on restricted intergovernmental and 0.1% on the sales and services, on permits and fees. So very consistent there. On sales and services, there was an increase of roughly $100,000, 43.7%. That was led by the town center fees, which increased about $36,000 in fiscal 2023 as compared to fiscal 22. Investment earnings, you'll see a significant increase there. So that line, $433,000, is really just reflective of the town's NCE Capital Management Trust account and the performance within that account. So certainly there were increases in interest rates during fiscal 23, and so those accounts just earned additional interest income during the year. So that's what's driving that there. Overall, there was an increase of about 5.4% or 1.48 million for the town's general fund revenues on a budgetary basis. Moving down, general fund expenditures. You'll see that there was an increase, just across all the various categories during fiscal 23. So in total, the expenditures for the general fund were at $25.1 million versus 22.9 in the prior fiscal year, or 9.6% increase. Some of the individual reasons for increases: number one, general government, you'll see, went up 1.13 million. There was about a $337,000 increase in capital outlays recorded within the general government function. So just a lot of that was actually in the IT department. There was also just an increase in personnel costs during the current fiscal year of approximately $500,000 within the general government function. So those two items are driving the majority of the increase in that category. Public safety, fairly consistent with the prior year, so a 4.5% increase. The increase there is largely driven by personnel costs, which were up $359,000 during the fiscal year. So public safety includes both police and fire. Planning was up $91,000 or 6.5%. Again, consistent theme. It's mostly driven by personnel costs. So there was a $126,000 increase in personnel costs within the planning function. Exclusive of that, the remaining costs were actually slightly down prior fiscal year. Transportation, this function is made up entirely of the fees paid to the town of Chapel Hill from bus transportation services. The contract price simply increased in fiscal 23, so that's actually what we touched on earlier, where there was a budgetary violation caused by the final invoice that came in at the end of fiscal 23 related to that contract. And so that was a 13% increase overall within that function as a result of the increase in that contract. Public Works and then Parks and Rec are both fairly consistent, so within 2.9% and 3.4% respectively of the prior fiscal year. Debt service, so this relates to the town's payments on any installment purchase agreements and or lease agreements. So that expenditure category increased by $236,000, 26%. That's largely due to vehicle financing payments, which began in November 21. So in fiscal 22, there was only a partial year of payments under a new vehicle financing obligation. So in fiscal 23, there was obviously a full fiscal year of payments going on for that. So that's really what's driving the increase there. Moving on, outside of the general fund expenditures and revenues, there's also other financing sources and uses, so things that don't fall within the revenues or expenditure categories, which includes transfers to or from other funds. In the current year, the general fund just had basically one transfer. There was a transfer of $90,000 to the parking operations fund as budgeted for payments on those parking leases. And so that was the only transfer out of the general fund in the current fiscal year. In the prior year, you'll see that large $6.9 million, which was transferred to capital project funds, largely related to the 203 project, so a $5.7 million transfer in fiscal 22, which you don't have a similar item for in the current fiscal year. Sales of capital assets, the town did dispose of the vehicles during the year, and as a result of that disposal, there were proceeds received for about $42,000 for the sale of those capital assets. And again, no similar activity in fiscal 22. And then lastly, lease liabilities issued. There was one additional lease obligation entered into during fiscal 23, which is related to commercial space leased at the Carrboro Mall. And so that's the only additional debt issued by the general fund during the current fiscal year. Overall, Roman numeral 6, we like to show the percentage of available fund balance to budgetary basis expenditures and transfers. You'll see a 58.62% for that this year versus 37.96 in fiscal 22. That's a very healthy percentage. According to the LGC, the average for similar units across the state is about 46%. So certainly well above the average there. In fiscal 23, or excuse me, in fiscal 22, the figure was artificially low, also due to that $5.7 million transfer to the 203 project that we previously mentioned. So that was kind of inflating that denominator in that formula. So without that similar transaction, again, a large increase this year up to 58.62%, and certainly very healthy. And then lastly, the property tax collection percentage. Excuse me, I'm not scrolling down on my share screen. 99.6% in the current year versus 99.46%. So certainly a very healthy collection percentage and a slight increase from the prior year. That's really all the comments that I have prepared. Again, certainly happy to answer any questions anyone may have on the financial statements themselves or anything within our presentation tonight.
Thank you, Chad, for the presentation. And also, I don't think Langston is here, Deputy Finance Director Langston Ramseur, and the Finance Department, and our Town Manager Marie Parker and all. I may have missed somebody, but everyone who kind of worked together to get all this information to the Town Council. Thank you. Questions, council members? Randy, Haven, O'Donnell.
Thank you, Chad. I really appreciate the going through this material with us. I had one question regarding the long-term debt obligation increase having to do with the retirement plan, and the increase was 1.6%. I've been watching that over the decade. How would you forecast, and what would be your sage advice to us on that forecast?
Sure. So specifically, you're speaking to the local government employees retirement system obligation. It's on the books. Yeah. So I'll say first of all that's a number that's calculated by actuaries at the state level, and then the town. So statewide, everyone that participates in that plan, the actuary gets the data, they put it together, and then they calculate the liability overall. There's lots of different assumptions that go into their calculations. Changes in discount rates being the big thing that happened in fiscal 23. So the discount rates for that valuation swing with changes in interest rates across the country. And so the large increase, the changes in the interest rates, and then also market performance on the investments that the local government employees retirement system invests in can change the liability pretty wildly from year to year. It's hard to say what the liability is going to look like next year. I would actually think in fiscal 24 these valuations, there's a little bit of a timing difference. So the valuation was as of 12/31/2021. That's used in your fiscal 23 statements. In your fiscal 24 statements, the valuation will be done by the actuaries as of December 31st, 2022. So with the increase in interest rates between 21 and 22, you'll actually see an increase in the discount rate, and you should see a decrease in the liability. It's kind of convoluted. But overall, through the actuary's report, they're continuing to project increases in what each unit's obligation is going to be within the pension plan as the years move forward. I believe for the next 5 or 6 years, they're projecting continued increases for those contributions. So I know you've seen your contribution percentages have kind of crept up. If it went from 7% 4 or 5 years ago, it's probably 11, 12% for each unit now. I don't think you're going to see as significant of an increase. So I don't believe you're going to go from 12 to 17 or 18. But I think you are going to continue to see increases in that required funding for the next few years before it kind of tapers back down according to the actuary's report. But again, the liability that's reported, again, it's going to swing rapidly. It's hard for me to predict exactly what's going to happen there, but there's large changes, and there are supplemental schedules to the financials that kind of show that history. But if you're speaking just looking at it from a budgetary standpoint, I think you should be prepared to continue to see increases within that plan for the next few years.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Now.
Thank you so much, Chad. Very thorough and transparent, and really appreciate your work here. My questions are really clarifying for the town manager, essentially, which is that we are just receiving this report tonight, primarily, no action required. Do I have that right?
Correct.
And then as far as the material weaknesses identified, I just wanted to make sure that I am sort of getting into the record for transparency's sake, and that I understand it correctly, both for folks viewing and folks here and folks watching later. all 6 or 7 of them.
All the funds.
But essentially, I just want to flag here that deep in this report, Chad, on this page 159 that you highlighted, we have the view of the responsible officials from Carrboro is that we agree with the finding and plan to work with the town council to develop an appropriate response to ensure the accuracy of future financial reporting. The town intends to formalize a plan to be submitted to local government commission by March 1, 2024. So you did, you told us, I'm just kind of restating that to be super clear and to ask, I mean, I understand there's sort of several steps here where you all are taking efforts not to express an opinion, but in layman's terms, this is really identified, contained, agreed with, we'll see next steps. Yes?
Yes, we actually hired a consultant early last year to start going over some of our previous findings, which kind of overlap with this report. We have recommendations and policy edits that we are reviewing now for implementation.
Great. Really appreciate the work on that and just wanted to kind of just be crystal clear here for the takeaways. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Frey.
Yes, thank you. Chad, you mentioned the very healthy unallocated fund balance. And I believe that's in context of a town policy that we want to keep that unallocated fund balance, according to our current policy, between 22.5% and 35% of the total. And that's really to give us the room to work with in the event of unexpected events during the course of the year, as they do happen. I imagine we were really happy for that buffer in 2020. And that is now up. Did I get that right? Am I connecting these two numbers correctly? That 57 and change you reported is that the same? Am I getting this apples to apples there?
Yes. So say that again. You're comparing. In my report, I had the percentage of available fund balance to budgetary basis expenditures versus you're talking about the fund balance policy.
Yeah. Am I correctly comparing that to the fund balance policy about unallocated fund?
Yes. Essentially, those are essentially apples to apples. Yes. But let's see. I believe that's on page 62 of the report. Is that what you're referring to? So looking at the unassigned fund balance.
Yes, that's right.
12.3 million.
There's a number of different denominators here, and I want to make sure I've got them the right one.
So available fund balance is actually slightly higher than that. Let me pull this up really quickly. There are certain things included within that. So the appropriated fund balance in the subsequent fiscal year's budget, 2.4 million. I believe that is actually included in your available fund balance. So within the financial statements, we report that as an assignment of fund balance because you have in the fiscal 24 budget, based on the proposed budget that includes expenditures in excess of the town's revenues. And so 2.4 million in the next fiscal year will be coming from the town fund balance, essentially. As it relates to, that is considered to be, though, available. It's been assigned in the next fiscal year, but as of 6/30/23, it's available for expenditure in the next fiscal year. So I'll back up. It's not exactly apples to apples. I believe everything else within that calculation is about the same. That's the one line item that you kind of have to exclude.
Yeah.
So if you were to add that back into unassigned fund balance, that becomes at 58%. If you're looking at comparing that to the town's policy, you would exclude that. And so that percentage is going to be lower.
Thank you. So broadly speaking, does that reflect basically monies budgeted that we did not spend last year and additional increases in revenue that we did not expect last year?
The total unassigned balance,
Mm-hmm.
it's really cumulative. So just over the entire existence of the town, the general fund for the town, that is representative of revenues and other financing sources received that are in excess of the expenditures. So that's if you take your balance sheet, took all the assets that you have on the general fund, backed out the liabilities and obligations, that's what you've got left in fund balance. Part of the increase in fiscal 23, which was
that's what I'm getting at. The degree to which it changed more or less than we had expected in our prior budget.
I think the budget was conservative. Both revenues were in excess of budgeted amounts, and the expenditures were beneath budgeted amounts, which I believe is typically the goal. You want to be conservative in the budgeting process, and again, with the exception of the transportation function. But overall, revenues were higher than anticipated. Expenditures were lower.
Thanks very much, Chad.
Any more questions, Councilman? None? So we are, we need to accept the annual
Move to accept the report.
okay.
Seconded.
Before I could finish, annual comprehensive financial report, an independent audit for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Motion by Councilmember Posada, seconded by Councilmember Frey. No further discussion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And thank you, Chad, for your presentation. Town Manager Parker, next item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second item is for the approval of a residential assistance program and request to set a public hearing for modifications to the stormwater rate structure. This is to establish a new stormwater residential assistance program and schedule a public hearing for February 27, 2024 to discuss potential modifications to the stormwater rate structure for program funding. Randy Dodd, our stormwater utility manager, is here to present and answer any questions.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This evening, I'm going to talk to you about work we've been doing for about the last 4 years, with some focus on more recent work in the past year. Also have here this evening Michael Dupree, who has been a consultant working with us for about the past year. He'll be making some comments when I'm finished. And Jeanette O'Connor, the chair of the Stormwater Advisory Commission, is also here. So I'm going to kind of do a very quick summary of work, starting with the acceptance of the Rain Ready study that the town pursued back in 2020. We worked with the Center for Neighborhood Technology to complete this study, and the agreement upon completion of that was that staff and the Stormwater Commission would follow up on the recommendations in that report. And just showing some of those recommendations here and trying to emphasize the point that we've done a lot of work in the past 4 years, as shown with these items we've checked off. And I did want to shine some light on the fact in the bottom right of the screen there was one very important result of that work we completed. We call it the Stormwater Handbook or the Homeowner's Manual, a pretty comprehensive guide to stormwater in Carrboro. A lot of effort put into that. It came out several years ago. And, we've widely disseminated in the community, and we've shared it with some of our peer communities and even with the state, and we've gotten pretty good feedback on it. What's circled there in green is what we're really focusing on tonight. We've come through this year and we've done a pilot project, as shown there, the residential assessment pilot project. We're talking about that a little bit in the first half of 2023, and then are moving forward to trying to get a program design completed with your blessing. So I'll say a little bit more about some of those things. So the other historical element to also mention tonight is that this is very consistent with Carrboro Connects and the work there. There's a whole section on green stormwater infrastructure in Carrboro Connects, and there's one goal and strategy specifically to develop programming and accompanying financial assistance for income eligible households. And there are these two bullet points focus on elements that are front and center for us right now. And so this residential assistance program relies on some of the selected most appropriate green stormwater infrastructure methods to be promoting, and also the technical and financial assistance element for income eligible households. At the end of, well, in 2022, one of the things we recognized was it'd be really helpful to have bring some expertise in to assist us with the work. And so we did that. We put out an RFQ. And through that process, we connected with Mr. Dupree, who's here tonight, and entered into a contract at the end of 2022. And he's been helping us here in 2023. The first element of work was to pursue this residential assessment pilot project. This shows the schedule of that work. I forgot to mention right up front as well that everything I'm saying here is, there's lots and lots of details in your agenda packet, so I'm just trying to give you a kind of a high-level summary of what all that material is. But here's the summary of what we did back in the spring. We basically put out a broad solicitation for any residents in Carrboro interested in participating in this pilot project to sign up. And that was about a year ago. And then after the application period, which went on for about 2 months, closed, Mike did a number of assessments. It ended up being 50 assessments. And I have a map here that I'll show you. And we also followed up with 2 surveys of all of the participants to see how the pilot project was received and any lessons we could learn from that work. This is just a map of where those 50 assessments occurred. Actually, we've done some more assessments in the past month or so, and so we're up to about 60 assessments now. And there's nothing that really surprised us about this. We were getting interest from those places in town where we believe the needs are the greatest, and this is pretty consistent with that. If you're interested in a little more detail, I'll be glad to tell you, more about exactly where all of these occurred. As far as the survey results from the folks that participated, this is just some of the key takeaways. There's more information that was included in the surveys. So one was sent in the spring and one in the fall. About 60% of the participants indicated they were likely or very likely to implement some or all of the recommended practices. And they also identified some obstacles to implementation that's important for us to be thinking about as we prepare a program design and move forward with future work. Some of the responses indicated the need for more information, both on the technical elements of the proposed practices and also on the financial side. There were some responses as well that indicated the work could be too expensive for the resident to pursue without assistance, and also need for assistance in finding contractors. For those responding in the survey that were clear about their need for financial assistance, most indicated that they would need a 50% cost share. So the options there in the survey, they could have anywhere from no assistance to 100%, and there was, I believe it was split up by 0, 25, 50, 75, or 100%. So that all leads us to the work we pursued in the second half of 2023, which is designing a new program. And this is the summary of what we've done this past fall. We had a second contract with Mike to assist us, and we basically rolled up our sleeves with Mike and with the Stormwater Commission to design a new program. And at the Stormwater Commission's meeting in December, we all reached agreement on the draft program design that is what we're bringing to you tonight for your blessing to adopt it as the guidepost for this new program. And so looking ahead for where we could go with this next is, in our proposal for you tonight, is that if you feel comfortable with moving forward with this, what we would propose doing is setting a public hearing for February 27th. And amongst Mike and the Stormwater Commission and staff, we all reached agreement that it would be wise to increase our stormwater fee by 10% or $10 per equivalent residential unit. There's a complete breakout of what that looks like in terms of the rate structure that would provide the cost share funding for this program, as well as funding one new staff position to run this program. Otherwise, the schedule here, just make the point that we are going into the operating budget development season, and we also work on an annual billing agreement with Orange County that we put together the information for them in the spring of every year, and they send out the bills July 1st. And so those things are driving the schedule we're hoping to adhere to, so we could roll this program out for next fiscal year, or which means fall of 2024. So, and the complete schedule of what that would look like if the rate, if the stormwater rate structure were amended is shown and included in the staff memo that was provided. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike to share with you his experience with assisting us this past year.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. So just a few items about my background. I retired from Durham County in 2021, but in my 11-year tenure with Durham County, I worked on urban stormwater, mainly helping over 3,000 residents in my 11 years doing drainage and erosion evaluations. And then where appropriate, I designed green infrastructure and wrote cost share agreements with the landowners. We implemented about 220 contracts with landowners, over 260 practices, and only that much because we did not have the funding. We had some county funding that was reoccurring that we used for the Impaired Stream Improvement Program, which was specifically for low-income households. And then we had state funding. We had an agreement with the city of Durham, but we mostly had to write grants. And the county of Durham has 17 impaired waterways and 55,000 single-family homes, so it has a much bigger water quality problem than the town of Carrboro does. But I wanted to give you a little bit about my background and working with the city of Durham. Next, please. So as Randy had indicated, my first contract was to do 50 assessments, site assessments. As you saw in the Rain Ready program, there was definitely community support for having someone that could evaluate sites. I run a small nonprofit, and I work closely with another nonprofit, and that's how I connected with Randy in with this contract. But in my first 50 site assessments, when you look at can you use public funds to do work on individual residences, this table kind of gives you the community benefit of what if you implemented 120 design practices on those 50 sites, you would have a reduction in nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment delivery to the streams. That is your community benefit for using public dollars. Next. And so when the commission asked, well, you designed these 120 practices at these 50 sites, how much is that going to cost? So I met with 4 environmental contractors on 3 sites, and then took that information and created averages for average cost of a certain practice, a little glimpse of what things would cost at that time. And as you know, working with contractors, things have been changing for 3 years. But this table actually gave me an opportunity to share with the commission what kind of costs would be incurred to implement those 120 practices that I designed. And also looked at a cost-benefit analysis for each type of practice as the cost to remove a pound of nitrogen, the cost to remove a pound of phosphorus, and the cost to remove the sediment. You can see that the total cost is $294,000 for this list of practices. So the second piece of this is in designing the program, the Watershed Restoration Program, what other municipalities are doing this? So, of course, I worked with the City of Durham and Durham County for 11 years. I was co-author of the MOU that we had between the city and the county. So I was very familiar with that, shared it with the commission. Also worked with Charlotte and Mecklenburg County for a brief period of time when I was employed with Durham County. We mimicked some of Charlotte. Charlotte was the leader in developing these programs, and we mimicked what Charlotte was doing in Durham, but we reached out to Charlotte and Mecklenburg again, and they shared their latest MOU agreement, and the commission had availability to look at that. And then also the City of Raleigh Rainwater Rewards Program. So the City of Raleigh dedicates about $500,000 a year for green infrastructure installation. And so I met with City of Raleigh program manager and City of Raleigh stormwater manager, and then we shared all of those ideas with the commission so that we went to other municipalities, shared what you're doing, see if we can copy some of it, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And so the last thing that I wanted to do, and this was not staff driven, this was Mike Dupree. I was curious in Orange County in comparing town of Chapel Hill, and I did serve with the previous administration for 14 months on the Booker Creek Watershed Work Group, appointed by the mayor. And so we looked at similar issues that Carrboro is facing for 14 months, but I was curious in how does the town of Hillsborough and Chapel Hill and Carrboro compare in revenues, square miles, residents, and employees to manage the programs. And so as you can see, the Carrboro and Hillsborough generate about the same amount of revenue. But if you look at the population, your Carrboro staff has a higher level of population and potential homeowners, a 1 to 3,000 ratio, whereas the town of Chapel Hill is dealing with about 1 to 1,000 residences. And why is that important? Because my 11 years in Durham, after an event like today, you will start to get phone calls and being able to respond in a timely manner. I just wanted to share with you my findings. All of these numbers came from the 2022 annual reports from each of the 3 municipalities and those departments. Because it takes money to run a program and it takes staff to run a program. So that's all I have prepared.
I think that's what we have, and Mike and I and Jeanette would all be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Randy and Mike, and also Jeanette O'Connor and the Stormwater Advisory Commission for bringing this forward. Are there any questions from council members? Councilmember Posada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, thank you for all the work and for this presentation. I'm looking at the process that, the summary process, and I'm curious, knowing that we've heard from residents a lot around timely responses, not just stormwater, just a lot of other things in town, and I'm very interested to know or get an idea of how much time would, how long would this process go from a resident applying for technical assistance to, like the reporting, the filing for support or cost sharing application to like something being complete. I imagine like something being complete would be determined by how much work needs to be done. But like from the moment that someone says, "Can someone come check this out?" to the moment that they would be applying for some support, like what is typically that time frame? And
Well, I'll respond as someone who hasn't been through a program like this yet, and then I'll turn to Mike to
What is
also
the
give it
expected?
the
Sorry.
voice of experience. So, my perspective on it is to move through as quickly as possible, but in a way that's as equitable and fair as possible. As we talked with Mike and with the commission, one of the ideas that came up was, would we want to open this up once a year for applications, or maybe twice a year? But I think the idea would basically be to have an annual cycle, and so that at the worst, that a project will go from conception to completion within a year. But I'll let Mike.
So it depends on the complexity of the design and the project. So you could have, from the initial site visit, a quick design, and a contract under $5,000 was the threshold was set, could be staff approved. Projects that would cost between $5,000 and $30,000 would need to go before the commission, which would be monthly. Is that correct? And then if it's more than $30,000, I believe it's outlined that they would come to the town manager for approval, and the council for approval for projects over $30,000. So those smaller projects, and that first table that I showed you, those smaller projects that cost less, those could move pretty rapidly. The larger projects would take probably 90 days.
Gotcha. No, and that's helpful. Again, I think one of the things that we continue to hear is like being able to provide, quick but also meaningful and good service. So I'm excited to move forward with this. That's the only question I had, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Frey.
It's good to see you. Good to meet you. So you were asking for a 10% increase in the fee, and that is going to fund additional service delivery, and in particular, a single staff position. Single additional staff position.
Cost sharing. This will provide, for the cost sharing funding and for one new position.
Based on the contacts that you've received, does that cover the sort of full need that you're seeing, or could you expand the program faster or make use of additional staff if the funds are available?
Just to clarify, if more funds were available?
Yeah.
This was the spot we feel like is the right spot for launching this program. It's a little bit speculative to know what the demand is going to be. If we have more money, we would do our best to make good use of it. But I will also ask Mike to chime in on this.
Well, my experience in Durham was the opposite. We had thousands of requests, and we did not have the funding. But we settled on the 10% and one new staff member as a good pilot program. But from my observations in the field in Carrboro, I think that the program could grow, and there's a definite will among the citizens to do this kind of implementation. But this level should be easy to manage and a good pilot and a good first start.
Thank you very much. And then one other question about the way that the rates are structured. Right now, we sort of have one rate for all residential, except the gosh, that's a big house, or our top 5% in impervious surface, right? I just crunched the numbers here. The 6,000 square feet and up of impervious surface is about 5% of parcels.
Yes. Well, there's a two-tier residential.
Yep, two-tiered in the residential, and then of course you've got a very finely tiered commercial rate structure. Did you consider at all making the tier structure for residential more progressive?
Adding some more tiers?
Adding some more tiers so that someone who's got a small lot, small house, a grand total of 600 square feet might, especially as this program grows over the long run, be in a different bucket from someone who's got, let's say, 3,500 or 4,000 square feet of impervious surface. Right now, they're in the same tier.
Yes. that was getting a step ahead of our thinking, but at the same time, if that would be something the council was interested in, it's something we could certainly look into between now and when the public hearing happens, if you were interested in a modification to, not just the amount, but the structure of the.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That's all of my questions.
Can you come up, please? Come on up, Jeanette. Thank you.
This is good context, though, Jeanette. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you, Jeanette. That's a good
Hi,
point.
I'm Jeanette. I'm the chair of the commission. Let's see, which one? This one I'm the chair of. Okay. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, and Randy, correct me if I'm using like the wrong words, but the reason we only have one tier residential, more or less, is because the GIS data that the town has access to is not accurate. And so we do not have accurate property boundaries. So we felt that staff who already have too much on their plate was going to be overrun by people calling and saying, you're charging me too much, you put me in the wrong tier. And staff would then have to go and find that GIS data. And then if the GIS data wasn't right, go figure out how to make it right. We don't have that technical support in Carrboro. We actually use the county's filing for that, right? The county's GIS data?
Finish your thoughts.
Yeah, anyways, so it was going to create a lot of extra work for the staff, and that data really just isn't available. And so that's why we ended up, commercially it is, and so that's why there's tiers commercially. But I mean, if you look at property lines on the GIS, some of them go straight through a house. Clearly, they are not accurate. And as much as we would like to think that everybody would be really gracious about it, there's probably people who would not be. And so we just thought we'd save staff time in that way because they already have too much on their plate. So please correct me, Randy.
Yeah, I generally just piggyback on what Jeanette was sharing, in that the parcel boundaries have challenges. And when we initially launched the stormwater utility and rate structure, that's why we started with just a single tier, and why we just added the one new tier when a couple of years later. I think that challenge is still there. And so I'm happy for us to take a look at the data and evaluate if we think it's maybe, if the data's improved at all in the past couple of years, or if we think, we have the bandwidth to take on some more administration for dealing with this issue. And we can come back to you, with a recommendation on if we think, what the implications of adding additional tier, one or more tiers might.
Sure. Thank you for helping me draw that out to sort of get that, okay, if we wanted to make this rate structure more progressive, what would we need, right?
And the commission back when we started the whole thing, the commission talked about it at length because we did not feel it was fair to charge 600 square foot houses same as 2,000 square foot houses or whatever, but it just wasn't possible at the time to do anything different. So I think the commission would be very open to making it more progressive if the town had a way to do that.
Right, and that may not be in the short term with this particular response, but maybe that feeds into our thoughts about the budget. What do we look at in our budget and in our directions for the town in terms of finding out how to improve that data? Thank you so much.
And so just to piggyback off of that, it sounds like it's pretty labor intensive, to be able to maybe implement, a more tiered progressive program. Would it require like a whole new staff member, or just what would that look like?
Well, I think it would depend on how much of a modification. There's two challenges. There's two pieces of information that feed in, and one is the parcel boundaries, and that's data that's managed by Orange County. So we would have to collaborate with Orange County to see if there might be a way to improve that data. And then the other is impervious surface, which is, there's different remote sensing techniques, and then and essentially what we found with other communities that have much more elaborate or progressive tier structures is that it does take a good deal of dedicated staff time. It takes some field work. Sometimes you got to field check what.
Measure it.
Yeah, and so for Chapel Hill, for example, they have a full-time position that this is all they do, and so
Okay.
they have a much more elaborate or much more tiered structure
Over in Chapel Hill.
in Chapel Hill.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, and then now.
Thank you for bringing this to this point, and having this pilot ready to go. I know the work it took. I remember the conversations about rate structure. Very complicated. I really like this pilot. I like the way it's laid out. Mike, I had heard just today I've been getting calls since this afternoon about flooding. You can imagine, and videos. But Mike, your name came up at least twice in terms of folks who are flooding today, but have been working with you, and I just want to convey the compliment. They were very impressed with your work and the assistance that you've provided. So yeah, the GIS, we know what the problem is, and the fact that Orange County manages. So is the technology out there, to be more specific, that you know of? I mean, anywhere nationally, is the technology, because what I'm not clear about is whether or not we have access to the best technology to give us the data we want.
We can certainly speak with our in-house town GIS staff and reach out to Orange County and see what the opportunities are there. I haven't asked that question, and I don't think it's a technological barrier. I think it's, as I understand it, without being a GIS professional, I think it's a very, very complicated data management. And I should actually, I should probably just not speak outside my expertise.
I want to state, though, in Durham County, the tax assessor's office would go out and do imagery, and if there were new structures, then they would go out and measure, and then in Durham, it would end up on the GIS data, I'm more correct, of what the impervious area is. So it was in the tax assessor's office where they went and did the field measurement, not in the GIS or the stormwater group. And so that's probably where you would get more accurate data, by partnering with the tax assessor and find out when they're going to go out and reevaluate. And typically counties do that every 5 years. I don't know about Orange County, but I know in Durham County every 5 years.
Can we find out about how Orange County's doing that then? They're managing, and in addition to that, yeah, I because in addition to Orange County, finding out exactly, how they do that, whether or not how that can help us to maybe press Orange County to get that level of accuracy. That's part one. Part two, and this is looking ahead, I think rate structure, I would really support something that is more progressive. I don't know how we get there, but I also would like us to have some assessment of the pilot, have a formal assessment after it's launched, and then to be able to look aggressively in terms of the programming, what does it look like if we apply the program tools, not necessarily funding and the cost sharing in the same way, but some of the program tools to moderate income homes that we have, so that because one of the things that is really eroding the moderate income families is flooding. It's coming out of their own pocket, and they're asking this question, and this is a question I asked when I was liaison. If we're going to tax our folks, they also want to be able to have access to the money that they're inputting. At some point, we need to have an answer to that helps with assistance in different neighborhoods such as Bardowell Creek, that we know has problems, neighborhoods, anything along Tom's Creek. You know what I'm saying. So, and I guess I'm futuring 3-4 years out once we can see and assess this program. But I do think that we're taxing ourselves. We have folks who are saying, well, how do I access what we need in our neighborhood so that we don't have the flooding problems that we have. And I want us to be very much aware of that level of interest in the community and sensitive to it. So if this requires resolution.
Randy, the cost share program is, correct me if I'm wrong,
Go ahead.
open to everybody.
Yes.
Just that the 100% level, where we don't have the homeowner pay anything, is there as an option for low income.
Right.
But this program and the help the town would give would be available for moderate income also. They would pay a part of it, but they would not be paying even half of it.
That's the cost sharing.
Right.
That's the cost share, yeah. So what we were trying to do was make sure that people who couldn't afford it at all, nothing, were still able to participate.
That's right. And that's the part.
But people who can participate a little, we can meet them partway, basically, so.
But does that include HOAs and homeowner associations?
It was written in that HOAs could apply for funding.
Yeah, HOAs can apply.
I think
It's not, as far as I know, it's not large-scale apartments.
no. That's
We're
commercial.
not there. That's the difference. But yeah,
I imagine that HOAs
multi-resident-
by default would be classified as not low income. Or is it actually assessed
I
based
don't-
on the, how would you assess that if an HOA reached out to
So
you?
the way that we did it in Durham County, it was a self-certification. So you just print a one-page form, and the landowner who's interested in installing the practice, they just self-certify that they're below the threshold and they qualify. So they never turned any tax returns. It was a self-certification, and then the county would hire a contractor and go implement the project. And that's the
honor
model
system.
that,
Sure, that makes absolute sense for an individual homeowner. My question is are you suggesting that an HOA would want to participate?
I'm suggesting that there's residents who
Are part of
are part of an HOA
okay.
that, and we don't know what their immediate needs are, but they are right, individual homeowners. And
I mean, my assumption would be that if the HOA was interested in doing it, that it would still be on a per homeowner.
well, this
basis.
is all the questions I'm raising so that we have answers for them when we come to the public hearing on this, because I feel like these are the questions that are coming to me. That makes sense, Rand? Thank you. So if there's a resolution on this, I'll make a motion to support it.
I'll second.
Okay. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell made a motion to move attachment A, and Councilmember Nowell gave a second. Councilmember Nowell.
And then the only other thing, I'm interested in a potential motion here, just to be super clear, but I want to check first that it's feasible for your department, Randy. Is February 27th a doable timeline to provide a rough out of labor, administrative, technological burdens to a progressive tiered system?
It's ambitious. It's not out of the question. we can.
Well, I'm not. I don't want to be too ambitious. I want to put a date to it so that we're giving very clear direction. But I'm not trying to blow up the the system here. So
Well, from my perspective and my responsibilities, I would suggest that we try to stay on the schedule rather than move it back so that we can, and this topic and this issue is always one that could be, if we can't figure it all out in the next 6 or 7 weeks, we could revisit it next year, between now and then the next time we.
So do we prefer an amendment to the RAP resolution, or do we prefer a second resolution?
Danny, I think listening to Randy, what I think might make sense is to go ahead with this program, but perhaps a second resolution where we are looking to have some input on the budget for what we might change.
Great. But I just think concurrent to February 27th would be appropriate because it keeps us ahead of budget season. So, okay, great. So Randy seconded, and I would also move to direct staff to just rough, as is doable, please, with understanding that you're working quickly, to just give us some sense by February 27th of what we would need to provide to get to a progressive tiered rate system.
Very good.
Okay, so in bringing all this together, so I hear that there's interest in a tiered rate structure program.
So much interest that I would be looking for a second.
Ended.
Orange County level of accuracy. I think was that you, Randy, that you were kind of talking about that pilot assessment and apply program tools to moderate income homes. I think we kind of maybe answered that question for you,
Or at least
or maybe
look
not.
into, yeah.
So, Randy, do we need
Can
a
we
motion
hold? Can we, if you want to be recognized, can we just please just raise your hand, because it makes it kind of hard, when several people are talking.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Frey.
Randy, a quick question. So are you suggesting that we add an additional motion or add to this motion something about, you're talking about middle income households, we would need to alter the resolution that we have sitting before us, I think, if we're going to direct staff to do anything else.
And that's why I asked Randy the question, because I don't know that Stormwater Commission thought about it or looked at it. Is that something that needs to be further discussed and make recommendation back to us?
In terms of how this program would be available to moderate income?
Right. Or from what you responded, it sounds like it wouldn't, that there are no additional things that need to be changed in order to address.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I don't have the draft program design in front of me, but there is a cost share table that looks at the income eligibility. But what I'm hearing you is that you would like to go even further than what's provided in that table.
Like almost to have another section in it, another tier in it.
Well, I don't know if it comes down to another tier, but I just want to be sure that folks in the community know that it's accessible and realize that even if they're in a homeowners association or a neighborhood association, that they may be able to have access. Does that mean that we would need to amend the resolution as it is, or could it stand, or could we do another resolution at another point that includes that?
I just wanted to weigh in real quick. I thought this was information gathering. I didn't know that we were actually trying to change attachment A. I thought this was extra information that was being asked for. Because we don't know the answers to the questions. So I would be more comfortable passing attachment A as it is, and maybe bringing back some responses to the questions that you've heard tonight from the council members, is what I was thinking.
Yeah. The commission will meet again the commission will meet again in 2 days. I don't even know what month I'm in. So we can talk about this in 2 days, and I don't know what the proper procedure is, if we just email you all, or how we get you your answers, but we could potentially get you your answers after Thursday.
Right, and so that would come through Town Manager Parker.
So we
She-
can probably answer your questions pretty quickly.
Yeah, so that would work. Yeah, and there is a motion on the floor for attachment A.
And from that, you'd be able to make a recommendation regarding that interest. Okay. Yeah, so I'm fine with the way it is.
Okay. Everybody good? A motion on the floor? Further discussion or questions? No further questions. All in favor of attachment A, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries, and thank you so much, Randy, Jeanette, and Mike. Thank you. Awesome. Mm-hmm.
Which, go back.
Madam Mayor, if I could, I don't need a resolution here. If we don't need a resolution, I just want to be really clear that we are recording that February 27th. I did make a motion to direct staff to have that report back by February 27th. If there's interest, I would entertain a second. If
Second.
What report are you referring to?
what would be needed, essentially, to enable staff to pursue a more progressive tiered system. Of
Oh,
rates for
that
stormwater.
Town Manager Parker already has that. She has that.
Okay,
And
if,
that
like I said,
information
this
is going to
resolution
come
was
through
strictly
her.
for clarity. I'm happy to withdraw.
Yeah, I think we're okay. Thank you. Town Manager Parker, next item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next item is introducing possible amendment to Wasamba, changes to service areas in the Chapel Hill jurisdiction. This is to introduce the town council to amendments the town of Chapel Hill has proposed to expand the water and sewer service boundary in the southern part of Chapel Hill along the US 15501 corridor to the Chatham County line. Trish McGuire, Planning Director, is here to present and answer any questions the council may have.
Morning, everybody. I'm going to take a moment to just pull this up. Take a breath. Oh. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. Happy New Year.
To you.
Okay. Just have a few slides to walk through, a little bit of information about this agenda item for you. And Vishnu Gangadaran from OWASA is here as well. He's here to answer questions for you about the evaluation that OWASA did with regard to capacity in the water treatment and the sewage treatment system related to this request. Just for a quick outline, I'm going to just provide a very brief overview of the Water and Sewer Management Planning and Boundary Agreement, the request for the evaluation, Chapel Hill's consideration of the request, the service and capacity evaluation that's been completed, a process and schedule, and then a question that we have that is under review at present. So the Water and Sewer Management Planning and Boundary Agreement, which we call WASAMBA, typically was enacted in 2001. The purposes are shown here on the screen. It actually followed from the establishment of the Joint Planning Land Use Plan and the Joint Planning Agreement and the University Lake Watershed zoning that led to Carrboro's current designation of where utilities are allowed to be extended. And these things all related to actions that were taking place with watershed planning throughout the state, actually, in the enactment of water supply watershed regulations in the late 1980s. In any case, the purpose principally was to provide a comprehensive countywide system for service for these types of utilities, public water and sewer service, to complement other growth management objectives that were spelled out in land use plans and comprehensive plans and agreements that, such as the agreement the town of Carrboro has with Chapel Hill for the annexation boundary agreement and other agreements like that, to resolve in advance and prevent conflicts about future service areas and annexations, to provide predictability for property owners and residents about these improvements, this infrastructure, these that have long-range implications for development, but also costs, and then limitations on where water and sewer services would be available. And the principal map that we use is shown here on the screen, just the designation of where in Orange County various interest areas are defined. So in June of last year, Chapel Hill Carrboro Chamber of Commerce president submitted a petition to the town of Chapel Hill requesting that the town of Chapel Hill consider evaluating extension of the water and sewer agreement, the service area, to the down 15501 in Chapel Hill's jurisdiction, about a half mile on either side of the corridor, and that's depicted in this map here. And so they put that request forward. There was a discussion of it briefly as an agenda item in September by the town council, and this is a little bit closer view of the boundaries we're talking about, the various boundaries. So we have, of course, the town of Carrboro, city limits, Chapel Hill, city limits, our various extraterritorial jurisdictions. ETJ is shown in yellow here for Carrboro and blue for Chapel Hill. And then the area that we're looking at, that was the focus of the petition from the chamber, shown here, and then a little bit of a blow up too on the right. So Chapel Hill considered that request really deeply on November 15th, following their staff analyzing the question a little bit more thoroughly. And this area has been part of Chapel Hill's jurisdiction since ETJ, since 1972. And there is some water and sewer service in this area as a result of development that had occurred back to the 1960s. So some of the neighborhoods do have some service, and Vishnu can tell us much more about that in detail if you have questions about those. I'm not going to try and attempt that, but there were some changes as Chapel Hill did its comprehensive planning in following the 1980s, and this whole structure, as I was talking about, of joint planning, et cetera. And they did lower the density, the zoning through zoning designations in the 1990s. And then subsequently, with the enactment of the water and sewer agreement, they did, this area was removed from the urban services area for the town of Chapel Hill. So that would not allow the extension of service lines for water and sewer further into the area. There are about 360 acres of land, about 139 parcels of land included within this yellow boundary. And that Chapel Hill is mapped in response to the petition. There are linkages to the current town of Chapel Hill long-range planning, the complete community work that they've been doing, the transit work, the BRT, as well as their climate action plan. And the town council did approve an amendment, a resolution amending the agreement consistent with this petition in November. And then that request was forwarded to the other local governments who are party to the agreement, which include the town of Carrboro, Orange Water and Sewer Authority, Orange County, and Hillsborough. So OWASA did carry out a sewer service and capacity evaluation, and this was done in preparation for that November 15th meeting, And so there was a preliminary analysis done, and it was based on the concept of missing middle housing with a development density of about 3 to 6 units per acre. The existing zoning in the area that we're talking about is 1 acre zoning or 1 unit per 5 acres, depending on which portion of it we're looking at. There was modeling done, and there would be a need for extending lines. The amount of those extensions are estimated in the evaluation, and cost estimates as well. And there is available both supply of water and treatment capacity in our system presently. In the framework of OWASA's cost sharing model, the extension of new services would be the responsibility of a developer of needing those specific extensions. Then system costs that would accrue from those changes, and they're described in the evaluation, and Vishnu can provide additional information, about how they affect storage and how they affect some downstream, lines that would need to be enlarged to include this area. Those costs would be assessed back in the capital improvement program that OWASA has. So they would accrue to the system as a whole, existing and future ratepayers. Our current process and schedule, as is noted in the agenda item, approval by all parties is needed. There is not a requirement for a public hearing or any joint meeting about this topic. Our possible dates for moving forward. We didn't provide a resolution acting on this amendment for you to act on in this agenda item. Wanted you to have an introduction to it and to be able to discuss it and ask questions if you have any. We have identified February 6th as a night to bring this back for you if you would like us to do that with an action item in front of you. OWASA has identified March 14th as a date when the board, OWASA's board could consider this topic, and Orange County has identified April 2nd as a date for the same. Hillsborough doesn't have a date, but they'll work it in. We understand from our discussions with staff there. Chapel Hill would follow this action with a deeper dive on the types of land use, future land use map amendments that would set the framework for the development of this area once water and sewer services would be available, could be extended, and then any appropriate zoning districts that would go along with those future land use map changes. The one question that has been submitted that is under review by both the town of Chapel Hill and Orange County is about the specific delineation of the Jordan Lake and University Lake water supply watershed boundaries. So this area in this particular area, some of the water flows to Jordan Lake, well, a lot of it flows to Jordan Lake by flowing basically kind of north up 15501 to Fan Branch down to Morgan Creek and around into the lake. And then other portions of it do flow more to the west, over to University Lake through neighborhoods like Heritage Hills and that side of Smith Level Road. But the town of Chapel Hill and Orange County staff are looking at the question more closely so they can provide a response back to us as was requested. And also, of course, the community request was made, and so that they can provide that. And we'll share that as soon as we have it. I think that's my last slide. Oh, I've got a few pictures here to walk through in case you have questions about the analysis OWASA did. And we're happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Trish. We do have members of I think we're going to go ahead and hear from members of the public. And you take a rest. You'll be back. The first person signed up to speak is Dr. Diane Martin. Welcome, Dr. Martin. The timer will be here on the screen for the soft 3 minutes.
Well, good evening. I am Diane Martin. I'm actually a resident of Chapel Hill, but I'm representing Holy Trinity Anglican Church in support of the Wasamba application. We sent each of you a letter last week stating our support, and we're here for 2 reasons. We see this as a social justice issue, and we have a vested interest. A little bit about Holy Trinity. We are located on 15501, right across from the Southern Village entrance, just within the current OWASA service area. We are a growing church that includes members from Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Durham, and beyond. We are committed to serving our local community, as you can see on the slide. In fact, when we learned the history of our current site, we applied for a North Carolina Civil Rights Trail marker, which is now installed on our site to honor the 1964 sit-in protests. As part of our commitment to social justice, we believe that there is a moral imperative to open up the opportunity for more missing middle and affordable housing through the OWASA service extension. This corridor will be developed, but the question is, what type of housing will be there? The town of Carrboro has been an oasis of middle income and affordable housing, but you're starting to feel the pressure of rising housing costs as well. There's a desperate need to open up more land to develop middle-income housing in this area. And there are many people actually living in that corridor who have poor water quality, and they don't have the means to pay for the expensive filtration systems. Without a WASA service, it will be developed as low-density parcels of 1 acre or more. And by the way, none of this land is in the rural buffer area. We agree with the provision of the proposed recommendation, whereas expanding the primary service area to Chatham County will enable opportunities to expand housing diversity and bring more housing adjacent to potential transit corridor. Now, I mentioned that we have a vested interest. We have a potential collaboration with a local developer to partner on 50 acres of land within that new service area. It's that little weird-shaped piece off to the right. This is a perfect case study to illustrate the housing implications. Under current zoning and with no AWASA service, the land can be divided into land for the church, for creek protection, and about 20 to 25 acres to develop either as 1 to 2 acre lots for multi-million McMansions, or with a WASA service, the land could accommodate the church as well as the opportunity for townhouses, condos, duplexes, and other creative designs to address the missing middle housing gap. And if you note that little orange square, which was also on one of the slides earlier, that's property that belongs to Chapel Hill, and they have plans to put an affordable housing community there. So in that area, you'll have both affordable and missing middle housing. And so we urge you to approve the Wasamba application. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Next, I have Nicholas and Brittany Saylor. Welcome.
Thank you.
And the timer is right up in the corner. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Brittany Seiler, and my husband Nick and I live like 3 houses down on Laurel Avenue. I am a clinical social worker, work with people with intellectual disabilities in the area. And Nick has a video marketing job that he works for himself. And we are coming as an example of a young couple, married couple, who want to have a family and kind of be part of that growing generation of Carrboro, but with 2 full-time incomes, finding it extremely hard to find a place that we can buy. We rent the house that we're in right now on Laurel Avenue. So we're here to advocate for the extension and just to speak to the need of middle-income housing with all of these McMansions that are going up in Carrboro, and just the incredible expense that it is to live in this area where we love it. I went to UNC for grad school where I got my social work degree and started a community here, and really want to stay and be able to raise kids in this area and just be a part of the great culture of Carrboro. But we're a little bit worried that that's not something that we're going to have access to, and that we might have to move 30 or 40 minutes away just to find a house that's affordable to buy. And I think Nick had a couple of things he wanted to say as well.
Yeah, well, I think you've that pretty much sums it up. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of reiterate that, you know, we really love this area. We love Carrboro, Chapel Hill. We moved here about a year ago when we got married, and we'd love to stay in this area. And so when we saw sort of this like, you know, the sewer and water line potentially being expanded, potentially more housing in that area. I mean, that's an area that we'd love to, you know, potentially move into if there are townhouses there that we could afford. And so that's why we're here, just to sort of advocate for that extension of that sewer and water line.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Next, I have Claudia Fernandez.
Hi, I'm Dr. Claudia Fernandez. I live at 605 Yorktown Drive. I'm one of those people who lives to the west of where all the water flows in Heritage Hills. And I'm very empathetic with the other concerns that have been raised tonight, but I'm also very aware of every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I could not reach my home tonight when I was driving home from work at UNC because the road was flooded out, and I had to go all the way around. And I brought video and pictures that I will submit to you as soon as I can figure out how to do that. While I was here, another neighbor posted that road that I took to go around to get to my house the back way in Heritage Hills had also flooded out. And that flooded out right where FEMA just bought one of the homes because it was flooded so badly that it's unlivable. And these also, I have great empathy with the young couple that was up here. A couple with 3 children ended up getting divorced, splitting up, moving to different parts of the country and breaking up their family. They've given me permission to share their story with you all. And the flooding that we are experiencing in Heritage Hills, which has long been considered a more affordable neighborhood in the Chapel Borough area, is really considerable. This is 3 houses that FEMA has now bought out. And if our roads are getting flooded out, I understand the desire to create more housing, but if we're creating more and 360 acres, 60 of which is slated for this missing middle or affordable housing and under the control of non-developers. 300 acres looks like, I've been to a lot of these Chapel Hill meetings, looks like it's going to become impermeable surface and is going to contribute to the water problems that you've been talking about all night with stormwater. We're living it in Heritage Hills. When I got home after having to drive around, first thing I did was check my rain gauge. It's 1.5 inches of rain. It wasn't a hurricane. It wasn't 6 inches of rain. It wasn't 14 inches of rain. It was 1.5 inches of rain, and our roads are flooded out. So we do have, I think there's 164 homes there that are on the other side of the water flow here. So I would encourage you, I don't want to lose my home. I don't want my family or any of the families around us to go through what I've seen my neighbors go through. I would like us to very carefully examine and do some studies to really understand deeply what it means if we lose all this green space, if we lose all of that permeable land. What we're talking about is an area larger than Southern Village for development. Every action every decision that you make has equal and opposite reactions. So please keep us in your thoughts as well.
Thank you, Dr. Fernandez. Next, we have Nick Robinson. Nick Robinson.
Good evening, Mayor Foushee and members of the council and the staff. My name is Nick Robinson, and I'm a member of the leadership team at Holy Trinity, which is the church that Dr. Martin spoke about. I just wanted to add a little brief additional item to supplement what she said in support of approving the proposed extension. Expansion of the Owasso water and sewer boundary as proposed and as approved by the town of Chapel Hill already can simultaneously put a dent in the proliferation of the McMansion subdivisions that Diane mentioned, but at the same time, it can also give needed density support to the mass transit goals for Chapel Hill and Carrboro, because neighborhoods in the expansion area don't have any sewer right now. They are currently confined to development as basically as large lot subdivisions, with lots large enough to include a building envelope, septic system, and a repair area for the septic system because they don't have any sewer. And typically this requires home sites of at least an acre or an acre and a half. And depending on how the soils are set up and where they're located, that can expand to 2 to 5 acres per lot. And so I'm sure you know that, of course, the larger the lot for the house, the more exclusionary the housing price becomes and the less affordable. And simultaneously, the less density that you have to support any mass transit goals or dreams that you may have for the corridor. But on the other hand, expanding water and sewer into the corridor will allow the missing middle housing option, for example, townhomes, small condominiums, just like the Seilers mentioned and Dr. Martin mentioned. And it will increase the density to support ridership on mass transit programs. So as the OWASA report on this matter makes clear, there's an additional benefit too, which is the expansion will make it possible to deliver clean water to some sites that now lack it, and also eliminate the specter of failing septic systems down the line. So it helps meet many of our shared goals around housing fairness, mass transit, clean water, reliable sewer, and the like. And so with those reasons in mind, we would respectfully request that you, along with the town of Chapel Hill, approve the proposed service area extension. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Next up, we have Aaron Nelson, President of the Greater Chapel Hill Carrboro Chamber of Commerce. He old school. Here he come.
Good evening and hello to my neighbors. Claudia lives across the street from me. It is my neighborhood, Heritage Hills. At this moment, I am waist deep on my property. Claudia is slightly uphill from me, but I've read all of the watershed maps in great detail, and none of it is coming from the property being discussed here. So yes, water is in my yard, it is flooding, but all of the maps say not from here. I do appreciate that the maps are being looked at and that staff is being asked to take a peek at that. That was my personal note. Professionally, hey y'all, I'm Aaron Nelson. I'm the president of the Chamber for Greater Chapel Hill Carrboro. We're a nonprofit business leadership organization working on behalf of 600 local employers, including 100 in Carrboro. We are the author of the petition, a copy of which is in front of you, to amend the water and sewer boundary agreement to allow for future water and sewer extension. Town Council passed that 8-1. In addition to our support for the petition is supported by the Big Bold Ideas Committee on Affordable Housing. They worked for a year on strategies to grow 1,500 units of permanently affordable housing, and extending water and sewer in this area is one of their top priorities. That coalition is made up of self-help, empowerment, habitat. Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and Orange County all served on the forming of that Community Home Trust, El Centro Hispano, CASA, UNC Hospitals, DHIC, the Chamber, and some private sector housing professionals. Speaking on behalf of the Chamber, we believe increasing the supply of affordable housing and housing in general is one of the top priorities. When we survey local businesses, recruiting and retaining employees is their number one challenge, and they attribute that to the cost and availability of housing. A few things about the property. One, it is being discussed, it's not in the rural buffer. The map I have here is slightly different. This is taking OWASA's service area map and imposing upon it two other things, the rural buffer and the area being discussed. It covers land that was originally in the urban services boundary, and it was pulled back from there. It's not in the University Lake watershed according to all currently published maps. It's exclusively in the town of Chapel Hill zoning jurisdiction. It does not include Smith Level Road. It's one of the best locations for increasing the supply of housing. It's on a transit corridor, a 4-lane divided highway. It's close to parks. It's close to campus. Passing this doesn't cause anything to happen. It has to go to the county, and then it will go on to Hillsborough, and even then nothing will happen. It was in the urban services boundary, and nothing happened for decades. It will take a developer to apply and at their own expense extend the water and sewer, and then bring fire service and improve water quality to some of the folks that are there. So we ask that you bring this back to Carrboro Town Council, and that you join Chapel Hill in voting to amend this water and sewer boundary agreement. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Next, we have Bridget Pemberton Smith. And then after her, Terry Buckner.
Hi, it's good to be here tonight with you all. My name is Bridget Pemberton Smith, and I'm with the Carrboro Business Alliance. I've been a business person in Carrboro for a decade, running a variety of businesses. Right now, currently own Bridges Art Therapy, which is located at 205 Lloyd Street. I am here tonight on behalf of the Carrboro Business Alliance to express support for the proposed change to the Wasamba service area. We encourage Town Council to vote to approve the extension. Our reasoning is simple: affordable housing. Growing our supply of affordable housing is a top priority for every business in Carrboro and is one of the Carrboro Business Alliance's 4 policy priorities. We really want to see our employees be able to live in the community that they work and not have to commute in. The 1-mile stretch of 15501 in this proposal is served by transit and very accessible to downtown Carrboro. It is a perfect area for affordable housing that our community desperately needs. Any possible future affordable housing expansion in this area will require water and sewer access. To develop a proactive plan for this area that includes affordable housing, we need to answer the water access question. The town of Chapel Hill approved this proposal by an 8-1 vote in November. We encourage Carrboro to approve it also. Thanks so much for hearing me out tonight, and thanks for your leadership in our community.
Thank you, Bridget. Terry Buckner. Hi, Terry.
Happy New Year. I'm going to do something dangerous and go off script tonight because everybody's tugging on your heartstrings about affordable housing, and it's something we all care about. But I think it's important for you all to understand that the area along 15501 and up and down Smith Level Road is already affordable housing. We are not 160 houses in Heritage Hills. We're over 200, and Dogwood Acres is almost as large. And so when we are jeopardized by the stormwater runoff and flooding that we're experiencing, you're affecting affordable housing. So we do need more affordable housing, but we can't afford to lose what we have. And that's what I'm asking you to consider. This area, and Aaron is also incorrect in saying that this does not affect University Lake. I've been working with the state, and I've been talking to the Chapel Hill people, and they've now acknowledged that their watershed maps are incorrect. So there is University Lake impact up and down Smith Level Road on the Chapel Hill side, and it's also around Star Point and goes across 15501. That watershed that they have, the Jordan Lake watershed in their area is a watershed 4, and it allows for 70% development. So any one single tract can be developed up to 70%. In the University Lake watershed, which is the in and out along Smith Level Road and Star Point and in Carrboro, it's 30%. And those are state regulations. They are not, you can be stricter than and let less than 30%, but you can't get more. So a lot of what we've already got out on the Smith Level Road would never be there, including Heritage Hills, under current regulations. The flooding that we are experiencing in Heritage Hills is coming from Star Point. Star Point is up for redevelopment, but the stormwater rules in Chapel Hill are not going to require any additional mitigation from it. So DOT is aware of it, the state is aware of it, and Chapel Hill's aware of it. So there's a lot of missing information here, and what I'm asking is that you stop, don't vote, and make sure that we have full information and accurate information before something happens that puts water and sewer into an area that is currently unzoned for missing middle or affordable housing. Chapel Hill decided not to do any zoning ahead of time. So right now, if somebody comes in, a big developer, and wants to put in a multi-million-dollar development, they can do that and put in water and sewer. So we would miss the affordable housing option. So please understand the process, understand the challenges before you make any decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And my last speaker is Olivia. Say it again. Luddington. All right, got it. Olivia Luddington, come on up.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I thought I wasn't going to make it because of the storm. I'm glad to be able to say what I emailed to you earlier. I really just want to follow up on what Terry said, that you really are the guardians of, as elected officials, you're the guardians of the water quality in University Lake. Just walking in here tonight and remembering, I think it was the early 1990s, these rooms it was packed, and people were all here to talk about University Lake watershed. At that point, we really didn't have any protections, and a lot of us didn't understand what watershed was or where it was, but we had experts here who helped to put together the zoning and the regulations so that we do have excellent water quality. And I think it's important for you, now that you're the ones who are making decisions, just to understand the impact of the vote that you take about whether or not to approve the urban services boundary, that just, if you would just do what Terry just said, please just slow down to make sure you do have all the information. Of course, we need affordable housing. I think chances are it probably will be approved at some point, but just don't rush into it. We're also working with Orange County, and I hope that you will do a more considerate job of being careful and to make sure that the water quality is protected. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes the public comment. It's the council's pleasure to have staff to come back for questions. We've already had the presentation. Ask Trish to come back up. There she is. Councilmember Posada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And before I get into any comments or questions, I just want to ask Nick one question just so that I know I'm in the clear. Given that this petition was originated by the president of the Chamber of Commerce, I currently sit on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce as through my own consulting firm, through my own business. I want to make sure that I'm in the clear to continue in this conversation without any conflict of interest or any of those matters. And the reason I'm asking is because I know that that's public, and I just want to make sure that it's on the record. Thank you. All right, thank you for that. So, if I understood this correctly, there is no resolution to approve this tonight, but there's no need for public comment. We could just, I'm curious as to today's just an information. Can you talk more about the train of thought about not having a decision before council tonight, or was there some information that we're missing that wants to come back aside from that one question? Or
No, I mean, there isn't a requirement for a public hearing. This is the topic that this council has never considered. The water and sewer boundary agreement hasn't been amended very many times, and so we wanted to just give you time to consider the question and see if you have any questions for us that we could answer, and then bring them back the answers back to you. So that's why we approached it this way.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I have other comments, but I'll let council members ask any questions before I go into those.
Councilmember Now and Haven O'Donnell and Merrill.
Thank you. Do we expect the results of the watershed map analysis by 2/6? Or do we not know? This just kind of concurrent throughout the process with other municipalities?
Orange County has indicated they do not think they'll have their analysis completed of this before they bring the item back to the commissioners. That's their initial response. So the question was the day yesterday, or maybe last Thursday, I think. And so I don't know if Chapel Hill didn't say, I mean, they're reviewing. I mean, at the presentation in November, it was acknowledged that there was a small piece of the property that looked like it was draining. Judy described that. And so Judy Johnson, Deputy Director of Planning in Chapel Hill, Assistant Director. So, you know, I think that they are looking with their staff at the question and trying to understand exactly how big of an area is, where is the line. You know, they're mapping the ridges, I guess, and where things are draining for each of the creeks that are located down there. So,
thank you.
On Star Point. And if I could just say, I mean, and this may be what Terry was saying too. I think some of you may remember an agenda item we did a couple of years ago, and it was about Old Fayetteville Road and how the Smith level, how the watershed boundary is mapped in Carrboro, and how our zoning map is established. And you know, there are the University Lake watershed does not conveniently follow all of our streets, you know, or roads. I mean, we do use those some boundaries like the streets to make a delineation between things. And so there are, you may remember there was a map that we showed that there were little bits of the University Lake watershed on the east side of Old Fayetteville Road. That was an area we were focusing on in the conversation back then. And some little bits of the Bowling Creek or Morgan Creek watershed on the west side. So similarly, I think there are some locations along, this is what Terry was referencing, there are some locations along Smith Level Road that are in a similar situation. And, you know, we've handled that question with the state and also with regard to development projects in the past. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. Usually it's a pretty good line because the road is built along, those roads are built along these ridges, you know, the sort of connection of ridges along where areas drain. So anyway, sorry to give you a long answer, but.
That's the good answer.
So. But I don't know if we'll have anything
I
by February
appreciate
6th.
So
We'll share whatever we have.
It sounds like we've confirmed that there's some impact. They are measuring the extent of it.
Yes.
We have a rough understanding of what it is, but there are probably some details, and
yeah, exactly.
We're not going to uncover something dramatically new, but there is an impact that maybe we don't totally understand.
I think to make it to be as clear and as correct as possible, that's what the remapping and or looking at the maps and trying to delineate it very clearly.
Appreciate it very much.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So, couple things. I think that this is really tricky because of all of the work that we do on climate resiliency and mitigation and stormwater issues. I do believe that this is going to get approved at some point, but personally, I feel responsible to have the due diligence information on the environmental impact and assessment and the mapping, only because I know the area's topography well enough to know that checking twice is really important, and having the most updated information. I appreciate what Chapel Hill's doing, and for all the reasons that Aaron mentioned, because I think it's important, and that's why I do believe it will happen at some point. But between now and that point, as a steward of Carrboro's environment, I feel that my personal preference is that as a council, we have all that information in front of us before we greenlight it. If climate and environment were not a second pillar to our comprehensive plan, I wouldn't feel so certain that the historical responsibility of being a good steward of our watershed was not upon us, and I do feel that. That said, I have a question, and I don't know whether Aaron can answer this or anybody else, but we keep talking about affordable housing. Actually, I know, Terry, you were on the Affordable Housing Task Force. What I don't understand is that we talk about having parcels that would be eligible for affordable housing. We know this is going to sound incredibly naive. What assurance do we have that it will be affordable housing? I have never seen that here in Chapel Hill and Carrboro, and I'm looking at what is being built in Chapel Hill right now and has been being built in the last few years, and realize that folks of certain incomes cannot afford it. Graduate students and folks who are newly in the workforce cannot afford it. What kind of guarantees, if this is dangled in front of us, as it always is, what makes this situation different? So
there's not a specific thing that has been drafted to say that the presentation the staff has made and the work that Chapel Hill is doing on complete communities and affordable housing reference some of the tools that could be used and incorporated into the zoning districts. But they were discussed. There was some discussion of this at the meeting in November with the town of Chapel Hill. But I mean, I think it would be probably in your best interest for us to just specifically ask the town that question. And bring that back to you.
That would be
They
great.
could just they could more fully articulate than I could, just because I'm not, I don't want to speak for them.
So in my
stay with us.
estimation, first I would like to see the mapping and the environmental and climate impacts, based on, 100, 500-year flood events.
Sure.
In addition to that, I would like to see, what kinds of things are in place that would ensure that there would actually, in fact, be affordable housing, because we have been caught many times when developers have said to us, oh, there's going to be affordable housing, and then, bit by bit, it is surgically removed.
The rezoning process was certainly discussed specifically as a mechanism that they would be considering using in conjunction with affordability.
So those are my
provisions.
two.
But I think it would be good for them to articulate give you a good description of what they would be considering.
Well, so first I just want to say my sympathies to folks that are kind of getting flooded out. I lost my house in a flood 25 years ago. Fortunately, it was a rental, so it was a little bit different situation. But had to flee with everything I had on my back and was homeless for about a month. Couch surfing. Fortunately, I had friends, so I definitely feel the impact of stormwater very personally. I also spent a month doing flood disaster relief in Houston a year later to help folks that were in a similar situation. So definitely kind of recognize the importance of that, and just kind of want to say how important that is, and that I feel that. And then as for kind of questions and comments, mine are very similar to Randy's. Just, kind of what assurances do we have that this will actually turn into any sort of, development that we would like to see? I mean, kind of assuming that it's going to become development and we don't want it to be McMansions. With, it's hard to kind of vote for it in good conscience without some plan in place. So I guess I would just kind of add to Randy's request that we have more kind of concrete information before we're expected to make a decision.
And the town of Chapel Hill's intent is, with regard to that property, which I meant to highlight but was highlighted by one of our speakers, they haven't expressed their interest and intention for affordable housing to be developed on that one parcel. That's right. That's correct. That's what. So that is another part of it. And then we did hear, about the church.
Right, and those are encouraging, but just kind of.
Yeah, I think that's why it would be good to have them just articulate their plan of the array of tools they think would be considered, which are spelled out in some of their materials already. But I just feel it would be good for them to direct you all to them. So.
Thank you, Trish. Councilmember Frey.
I'll be really quick. Just two questions, I think. Terry Buckner brought up something really useful here, which is that the watershed rules, she's talking about the 30% limitation on development, that applies to areas that are found to be within the University Lake water supply watershed, yes?
Well, that's the state maximum, but for a WS2 watershed. But our impervious surface limitations are much more stringent in that we have a 4% limitation on impervious surface. And so, yeah, as was noted, I mean, Heritage Hills is a type of development that wouldn't be permissible under the regulations that we've had since about 1990.
That applies at any time that an area is found to be within the watershed, yes. So in other words, my point is, regardless of the timing of approval of this expansion, if Chapel Hill then comes back and says, oops, my gosh, yes, this piece right here is within that boundary, then the rules of the appropriate jurisdiction, right, whether that's Chapel Hill or Carrboro, depending on where, I guess in this case it would be Chapel Hill, since it's their ETJ, that their rules, which overlap the state rule about the watershed and Chapel Hill's rules, would govern the density development for that piece in the watershed regardless. Is that correct?
I would say yes. I mean, I'm not, when I said the 4%, I'm just for clarity, that's Carrboro's regulation of the University Lake watershed, not Chapel Hill. So it's my expectation that, yes, that's how it would be regulated based on the underlying water supply watershed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is a good point that Councilors Haven O'Donnell and Merrill have brought up about affordable housing, but I think, unfortunately, that we know the answer to that. I know Councilmember Haven O'Donnell has a ton of experience with sort of the history of affordable housing in Carrboro, and if I understand correctly, where we are mostly bound there is by state law, and the rules that govern our inclusive housing ordinances and the ones that Chapel Hill would use. So the decision that we're making here has no impact on the assurances that we would have or that Chapel Hill would have about the availability of what we would consider truly affordable housing, because those are governed by state law and by Chapel Hill's ordinances, regardless of our decision. Just a comment there across the table.
Well, and I guess
Thanks very much, Trish.
And I wasn't even expecting it to all become 100% capital A affordable housing, but even just some assurances as to what we can expect to see there when it's done in terms of density, in terms of lot size, housing size. So it doesn't need to necessarily all be capital A affordable housing because, yeah, unfortunately our hands are tied on a lot of that. But I think there's a lot of versions of that development that would be better than 20 McMansions. So just trying to make sure we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, the only comment I would make is I'm exhausted hearing about affordable housing as a goal when developers don't talk about affordable housing. So there's a gap between what we want and what developers will actually, I mean, they have a bottom line that they want to make. So that's why I think seeing a plan would, it's not a concrete assurance, but it's a way of saying to us, well, at least there's a plan that folks are floating that has some viability. When we blanketly give developers the go-ahead because they promise something that we can't see, then they start to, bit by bit, just pull away because they say they have to meet certain numbers. And the longer it is, the more the numbers change. So for that reason, I think it's important for us to, to see a plan and to really create the conversation that the community expects to see a plan, so that folks who are hoping that there will be homes for them to be able to move into and create, their own, to have their own property and create intergenerational wealth. That can't happen unless there's the those first home properties, and we've totally lost that. And so, we have to figure out a way to get developers to not only make a promise, but to show us something in hand that makes sense.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as I'm looking at this in this discussion, I see the wisdom in bringing it as an item to ask questions as I'm sitting here. But also in the spirit of getting to a resolution tonight, I personally would like to see this move forward. I will not move the item be approved tonight, but I will move that staff brings back a resolution to the council within the next, I don't know, 60 days. Does that work? I don't know. 60 days work?
I think they wanted.
We have it February 6th identified as the date to bring back an item on this. For
Perfect.
you.
Let's do that. And in that time, I would
That's
also.
still-
Oh, sorry. Yeah, February 6th, and I would also move in this resolution that we invite key stakeholders, whether it's someone from the town of Chapel Hill, folks who are looking, who already have plans to develop on if this is to be approved, to talk about what their plans are in the spirit of understanding what people want to do in this. So the resolution is twofold: to bring this item back with a resolution for an action item on the stated date, as well as inviting key stakeholders, which, as you know, as staff, y'all can figure, you can, have a better understanding of what that is, to also present to the board as far as what their plans are for this.
Seconded.
Oh, you're seconding. So every time I hear about affordable housing, I get really excited. Affordable housing is one of my things. But I'm also keenly aware, of having infrastructure, that supports affordable housing. And so this is where we are. Well, I feel like it's, competing interests, housing, environmental impact, stormwater runoff, this is, we hear it, this is constant. So I guess my first question is it sounds like we won't have the answers to our questions by February 6th, because I've heard a question around watershed mapping and whether or not the jurisdictions are in alignment as far as the watershed mapping. I think you talked about that a little bit. The housing affordability question: how can we ensure that the housing is actually affordable? We need a developer with a project. We also need funding mechanism. We don't know anything about that. We're kind of, way far ahead, but, it's still a good question. And then I had a question about the town of Chapel Hill. Aren't they operating using the inclusionary, don't they operate under inclusionary zoning?
They have an inclusionary zoning.
Okay. Can you talk about that? We don't have it here. I know that, but I know that they operate under inclusionary zoning.
I'd like to, if I could really summarize that in a response back, it would be better.
Oh, yeah,
just because
that's fine.
I want to review it to be sure I don't misstate.
Okay.
There have been some changes.
Oh, okay.
And I want to be sure I get the way it works now. And I don't want to misspeak. And I did want to make one point. We did receive information yesterday. I think it was yesterday, or it was over the weekend actually, from the town of Chapel Hill, just sort of, again, responding about how they, and this is about the timing. Judy didn't specifically say when they would have the answer, but they are looking at this question of the boundary, and we may have something from them by February 6th.
Is this, it was part of your presentation,
Yes.
the question that you're still,
I know
could you
that-
put that back up?
Sure. And I know that this question here,
the
I know that
mapping.
Orange County didn't think they would have it ready, but town of Chapel Hill may have their response back, and they're talking with folks at the state as well. So it's the same question really, but and there's a coordination of the mapping and so forth, but it may be not 100% answered, but it might be 98% answered. So I'll hold out some hope that we will have some information for you.
And Chapel Hill approved, and they approved ahead of the answer to this question.
Yes.
Okay. Let's not holler from the audience. So those were my questions. I don't think I have anything else. Does anybody else? There is a motion on the floor. If you wouldn't mind, Councilmember Posada, could you restate that motion? I know Councilmember Frey gave the second.
Yes, the motion
30.
is to have staff bring back a resolution on February 6th. Thank y'all. With also information from key stakeholders and as much of an answer to this question we can have from Chapel Hill.
Okay.
I've asked for that ahead of.
That's
the
this question, the mapping.
Yeah, that was a question I was.
Does that include the environmental impact as well?
When you say environmental impact, what do you mean?
On the
Beyond
watershed.
the watershed boundary, that question? Yeah, we'll bring that back. Hopefully we'll have something to share with you, but we'll try.
All included in this.
Yes.
Question.
Okay.
Yeah, the other question was about the plan for affordable housing.
Yeah, so where's
provisions.
that's where the stakeholders would come in.
Yeah. Yep.
Further discussion, comments? Motion on the floor. No more discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
It's like I'm leaving.
I'm done. I'm gone. Town Manager Parker. I think we're on the last item, correct?
Yes, we are. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The final item is the 2024 council meeting calendar revision. This is to present proposed modifications to the 2024 meeting calendar for consideration and potential approval by the town council. In addition to the information in the packet, I'd like to share some supplemental insights. Compared data from comparable municipalities in North Carolina. This shows that the meeting schedule averages 1 to 2 total monthly meetings. As an additional reference, Chapel Hill currently holds 2 business meetings and 1 work session per month. We recommend moving to a schedule of 2 business meetings and 1 work session effective with a March start. The primary goal of the schedule change, as is outlined in the pocket questions, is to enhance staff planning and effectiveness. Fewer meetings will allow staff to better distribute materials across meeting agendas, ensure balanced workload, and enable greater focus on operational productivity. If adopted, we will conduct a comprehensive evaluation to assess the effectiveness of the change in June of this year. This will help ensure the revised schedule meets the needs of our residents and of council, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and Wendy is here as well if there are any.
Thank you, Town Manager Parker, for that background information. Are there any? I'm sure that there are. There not? Oh, okay. What we doing? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem now.
I'd like to move that we approve the meeting calendar.
Oh,
question.
Okay, so moved by Mayor Pro Tem now, seconded by Councilmember Posada, and questioned by from Councilmember Haven
I just have a
O'Donnell.
question on the schedule, on the calendar. Looking at the October 2nd.
First, already.
I know, but 8th. Okay, so the no, well, I'm good. Never mind. I wanted to be sure that it didn't include the Jewish holidays,
Got
which always seems to be an issue. No, we're good.
Okay. And so I had one question, Town Manager Parker. And so public hearings are usually on, I believe, the 4th Tuesdays. And so they would just move to 3rd Tuesdays.
Correct.
It wouldn't be an issue. I guess, I mean, we'll see how it works out. I'm just, and you and I will continue to work on agenda management so that we won't have agendas that are in the midnight hour. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
My other question really is between now and June, right? is there some way that we could just kind of, like in June, take a pulse and give you feedback?
Yes, I presented that, and that we would revisit in June and see how it's going.
And the only other part of the question is, what is the communication plan to community so that, they understand the changes and, know what to expect?
Sure. Our comms department is poised and ready to get that information out. We will be conducting meetings as normal this month and next month that are within the schedule, so we have until March to get that information out.
And the only other thing that I would ask is that, in addition to anything that's done electronically, we also get things up at the kiosks. And
Sure.
Ready to vote?
Yep.
I think we are. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Town Manager Parker.
Thank you.
Are there any matters by council members? Motion to adjourn?
We need a closed session. Yeah, a closed session. Closed session.
Public. Right, but we gotta come out of open.
Yeah,
Motion to adjourn?
Gotta make the motion to go to closed session.
Right.
Oh, is that first?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion to, you said it. Oh, I didn't know who said it, sorry. Motion to go into closed session.
So moved. Second.
All right. We're ready to go into closed session. Say aye.
Who made the? Aye.
Wait a second.